I was always the forgotten one in my family, but now they want me back. My next decision will change everything in my life. In my family, I, 42, have always been the unnoticed child. I'm not sure how to respond to my parents' sudden desire for me to return to their lives. There is a big age difference between myself and my 5 siblings, of which I am the youngest. As a child, I frequently had the impression that my house was a parallel universe. I was just there, the quiet one, the one who didn't cause trouble, the one who was easy to forget, while my siblings were in and out of hospitals and therapy sessions all the time. One of my first memories is of returning home from school to find the house deserted. Nobody checked my schoolwork or inquired about my day. Everyone was too preoccupied with my siblings' problems to realize that I also needed to eat, so I learned to cook for myself early. I vividly remember how disappointed I was when my parents failed to remember my birthday for 3 consecutive years. They were just overwhelmed. It wasn't that they were awful people. I suppose they felt they didn't have to worry about me because they had 4 children who were coping with different health and mental health problems. I was the normal one, the healthy one. However, it's not as easy as it seems to be the normal one in a chaotic family. Throughout his childhood and adolescence, my 52-year-old oldest brother had to spend a lot of time in the hospital due to a serious chronic condition. He still has health issues and is largely dependent on our parents for assistance. Since I can remember, my 50-year-old elder sister has been in therapy or taking medicine for her early struggles with anxiety and depression. The 48-year-old twins who are the middle siblings needed special education and ongoing care due to their learning difficulties. Then there was myself, the last person to consider. The one who was supposed to comprehend, to be self-sufficient, to simply be there. It was out of need that I learned to be independent. I was essentially rearing myself by high school. I knew that grades were my ticket out, so I earned them. Not because anyone pushed me. I joined clubs and teams for the opportunity to spend as much time away from home as possible, not for the recognition. I remember one specific instance from my junior year of high school. It meant a lot to me that I had advanced to the debate state finals. I had put a lot of effort into it, practiced late into the night and given it my all. In the weeks before the finals, I mentioned it to my parents several times. I was set to go when I stepped downstairs on the morning of the event, wearing my finest attire. Frazzled as usual, my mom replied, "Oh, are you going somewhere?" as she hardly looked up from a stack of medical bills. I tried not to sound hurt as I reminded her about the debate finals. "It's today, I told you about it." She responded, "Oh right." But it was obvious that she couldn't truly recall. "All okay, good luck. We have to take your brother to his doctor's appointment, therefore your father and I are unable to attend." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. Naturally, and always has been, my brother's health came before my argument. I made it to the finals by myself and finished in second. Nobody inquired about my experience when I arrived home. For weeks, the certificate I was given remained on my desk, hidden from everyone else. My getaway was college. I finally felt like I could breathe after deciding on a school on the opposite side of the nation. I made friends that didn't need to be reminded of my birthday, genuinely saw me and paid attention when I talked. M and C, 2 of them, grew to be the family I never had. MC and I made the decision to remain together after graduation. We started establishing our life after relocating to a new state that was far from any of our relatives. Determining that I made a difference, I threw myself into my career and I was successful. Now that I'm 42, my life appears to be going well. I run a skilled team as a senior marketing executive at a Fortune 500 firm, and I'm renowned for my creative problem-solving and ability to perform under pressure. Ironically, I became quite good at drawing attention to myself and making things visible because I was raised invisible. Meetings, presentations, and decisions occupy my days. Even though I put in a lot of overtime, I enjoy my job because it gives me a sense of worth and purpose that I didn't have as a child. People at work pay attention to what I have to say because they see me and respect my viewpoint. I never get tired of the euphoric feeling. My life is comfortable while I'm not working. I have a small but close-knit group of friends, I travel whenever I can, and I possess a lovely condo with a view of the city skyline. My best college pals, M and C, are still my pillars of support, and I've formed other deep bonds. We host movie marathons, game evenings, and weekend brunches. I've been addressing issues of abandonment and persistent feelings of invisibility in therapy for years. Although the process has been drawn out and occasionally difficult, it has improved my understanding of who I am. I've learned to respect myself, set limits, and quit looking to those who can't give me approval. My interactions with my family have been sparse for the past 20 years, rare visits every few years, and infrequent phone calls on holidays. To shield myself from the hurt of their apathy, I kept them at arm's length rather than cutting them off entirely. Then, unexpectedly, my mother called last week. We hadn't spoken for more than a year, and our most recent contact had been a clumsy exchange of pleasantries, so I nearly didn't respond. But I had to pick it up for some reason. Without even saying hello, she continued, "We want you to come home for Thanksgiving." She sounded older and more worn out than I could recall. "You are missed by your father and me." It seemed as though someone had punched me in the stomach. "Do you miss me? When I was growing up, where was this? When none of them appeared after I graduated from college. When I built a life for myself for 20 years. I stumbled. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it. Work is really busy right now, and I have plans with friends." "Are you planning with friends?" Her voice assumed that tone of remorse that I was all too familiar with from my early years. "Your family is us. If you need to alter your plans, your pals will undoubtedly understand." Family seemed like a hollow term. After feeling like an afterthought my entire life, what did it mean? She went on to say, "Your siblings will all be here." Apparently oblivious to or choosing to disregard my reservations. To have everyone together once more would mean so much. I was filled with resentment. Is everyone back together? First of all, when had we ever been together? I couldn't recall a family meal where someone wasn't experiencing a crisis, going to therapy, or being admitted to the hospital. I finally said, "I'll think about it," to put an end to the discussion. However, I knew I wasn't going as soon as I hung up. I became physically nauseous at the idea of sitting around a table and looking like we were a happy, regular family and everything was good. 1 week later, I'm still debating the choice. I had a tiny kid-like want to leave, to think that perhaps, at last they noticed me. That perhaps they wish to make amends because they regret how they treated me. However, the mature side of me, the one that has had treatment and undergone the arduous process of recovery, is more aware of this. They haven't called because they've suddenly realized how much they've been ignoring me. My siblings are still having difficulties, they are growing older, and they have come to the realization that I'm the only one with their lives in order, which is why they are phoning. I'm their fallback option, not their daughter. I can't quit thinking about it though. What if I'm mistaken? What if this is a sincere effort to get back in touch? Am I being unforgiving or overly harsh? Or am I at last defending myself and establishing sound boundaries? I thought I had dealt with the feelings that the call had evoked. More than in years, I've been thinking back on my early years. I had a dream the other night that I was back in my former bedroom, shouting loudly, but no one could hear me. I felt like that forlorn, invisible youngster again as I woke up in a cold sweat. It also has an impact on my work. I was thinking about my family when I slept off at a crucial meeting yesterday. My team took note and continued to give me worried glances. I have a reputation for being calm and attentive, yet after just one phone call, I feel like I'm losing it. After discussing it with M and C, they both believe I shouldn't go. They have personally witnessed the harm done by my family and the years it has taken me to recover. They fear that returning home will reverse all of my gains. "There is nothing you owe them," M stated firmly. "Don't allow them to pull you back into their drama. You've created a wonderful life for yourself." C was more tactful. "Remember how long it took you to stop flinching every time the phone rang? I know it's hard," he continued. "When you first started establishing limits with them, how many panic attacks did you experience? Is all that development worth the risk?" I am certain that they are correct. However, that little voice of the young child who merely wanted her parents to notice and adore her is still inside of me. "Perhaps this time will be different," she's whispering. "They might finally be the family I've always desired this time." M and C also remind me that I have the freedom to choose, and they will be there for me no matter what. And I'm grateful for that, but it doesn't help with the decision. So here I am asking random people online for guidance. Is it improper of me to want to go? Is it selfish of me to prioritize my mental well-being over a family reunion? Or, after being ignored all my life, am I now acting in my own best interests? Even though Thanksgiving is still a few months away, I can't stop thinking about this. I'm struggling to focus at work and fall asleep. I become anxious every time my phone rings, wondering whether it's them calling again. A part of me wants to stop communicating with them, block their numbers, and carry on with my life as it has been. However, another part of me feels bad about even thinking about it. Even if they weren't particularly good parents, they are still my parents. I have no idea what to do. I'm not sure how to make sense of the difference between the accomplished, self-reliant adult I've become and the lonely, invisible child I was. I'm not sure whether I can deal with my family without becoming that frightened, abandoned young child again. What should I do, Reddit? Should I risk rehashing old wounds by attending this Thanksgiving dinner? Or should I keep my distance and possibly ruin any possibility of a reconciliation? When your parents suddenly want you in their lives after decades of ignoring you, how do you handle it? I would appreciate any guidance. I could really use an outside viewpoint because I feel like I'm drowning in uncertainty. Update 1: About 2 weeks have passed since my last post, and while I would like to claim that things have become more obvious, they have really gotten more confusing. Though recent events have taken me by surprise, I appreciate all of the support and advice. It has given me a lot to think about. First, my older brother, who has long-term health problems, called me out of the blue. It was unexpected to see his name on my caller ID because we haven't spoken face-to-face in years. I briefly believed that something horrible had occurred. His voice seemed older and more worn out than I remembered when he said, "Hey sis. Have you got a moment? We need to talk about something serious." I felt shivers down my spine at his tone. He seemed to be speaking for the entire family, and it sounded menacing. He went on, "Mom and Dad have been talking," without waiting for me to answer. "As they age, they are concerned about the future and who will look after things after they are gone." A knot started to form in my stomach. I hoped I was mistaken, but I had a feeling I knew where this was going. When they can no longer care for one of the boys, they want to appoint you as their legal guardian. The boys referred to our brothers who suffered from serious illnesses. It seemed as though someone had punched me in the stomach. Protector? Me? For most of my childhood, they hardly acknowledged me as the invisible child. "What?" I choked out. "Why me? Why now?" My brother let out a deep sigh. "Look, I realize this is a lot to ask, but you are the only one who is truly stable. Everyone else has their own problems. You've succeeded. You're in control of your life. They believe you to be the ideal option." What I was hearing was unbelievable. Suddenly, after years of being neglected and treated as an afterthought, I was given this enormous duty. It was like a horrible joke and it felt unreal. Have they even considered asking me about this? With a voice trembling with rage and incredulity, I demanded. Or were they just going to spring it on me at Thanksgiving? The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. When he eventually said, they were hoping to discuss it in person. I thought you should know beforehand, give you time to think about it. Consider it. How could I possibly consider being guardian of a brother that I don't really know? A sibling who has spent decades taking care of our parents. "I can't do this," I replied, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "I can't just take on this duty and drop everything. My life is my own. Plans of my own." My brother remarked, "I know it's a lot," in an apologetic tone. "They're desperate though. They must have confidence that someone will cover for them while they are away." I sat in startled silence for what seemed like hours after we hung up. It was all so utterly ridiculous. After years of ignoring me, they now wanted to put this huge responsibility on me without even consulting me. I thought things couldn't get any more confusing, but a few days later, I got a letter from my mother. It was lengthy, meandering, and chock full of the same guilt-tripping jargon I recalled from my early years. She continued by talking about how difficult things had been for them. How much they had given up for the family, and how much they needed me right now. Near the end was the section that truly affected me. "Sweetheart, we're not asking for much," she wrote. "All we need to know is that someone will take care of the family while we are away. Our only hope is you." Just hope. I mean, how many times did I need them? When I was growing up, feeling unwelcome and invisible, where was there hope for me? Ever since I got that letter, I've been a complete disaster. I've struggled to focus at work and sleep. My group has observed. Meetings have had to be rescheduled because I simply cannot focus. Every part of my life is being impacted by this circumstance, and I detest it. They still have this control over me, and I detest it. For an urgent wine and venting session, I invited M and C over. On my part, they were both indignant. "They can't do this to you," M exclaimed, her eyes glimmering with rage. "They cannot expect you to be their safety net after ignoring you for decades. It's unfair." C remained supportive but was more measured. He added softly, "You need to consider what's best for you. Not what they desire or what's best for them. What would you like? What am I looking for?" It's a straightforward question, but I'm having a terrible time coming up with a response. A part of me, the young child who constantly sought her parents' favor, longs to say yes and to be the decent daughter they never thought I was. However, the mature me, who has put a lot of effort into creating a life and identity apart from my family's shadow, is yelling no. I've devoted a significant portion of my life to proving my value to them, to being noticed, to being appreciated. And they want me to sacrifice everything now that I am at last living a life where I am respected and seen. To suspend my life. To tidy up the mess they created. I become more irate the more I consider it. I'm not being asked to join the family. They want me to be their guardian and caregiver. They want a promise that their issues would be resolved when they leave, not a relationship with me. I've made up my mind after spending hours discussing it with M and C. I will not be attending Thanksgiving. I will not act as their guardian. I refuse to allow them to drag me back into the dysfunction from which I have so desperately fled. It won't be simple, I know. I'm aware that there will be emotional manipulation and guilt trips. However, I am also aware that I am worthy of better. I should be able to live the life I have created for myself without having to deal with their disregard and demands. I will give my brother a call back tomorrow to inform him of my choice. After that, I'll send a letter to my parents outlining my reasons for not attending Thanksgiving and my inability to fulfill their wishes for me to be their guardian. Even though I know it's the correct thing to do, it will be difficult. I'm afraid. I'm depressed. I'm pleased with myself for finally putting my needs first and putting my own health ahead of their expectations, even if I still want things to be different. Thank you to everyone who left a remark on my previous post. During this trying time, your words of support and encouragement have been invaluable. After a lifetime of feeling invisible, it means more than you can imagine to feel seen and understood. After speaking with my family, I'll provide another update. Good luck to me. I suspect that I will require it. Update 2. I feel like I've aged years in a matter of weeks since my last update, which was around a month ago. My family's predicament has escalated in unexpected ways, and I'm still in shock over all that has transpired. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who left a comment on my previous post. During a very trying period, your guidance and encouragement meant the world to me. I heeded your advice, and when I needed it most, it gave me the courage to defend myself. I declined the position of guardian for my siblings and chose not to attend Thanksgiving, as I said in my previous update. After calling my brother to inform him of my choice, I wrote a letter to my parents outlining my justifications. For a time at least, I believed that would be the end of it. I was mistaken. When I got home from work last week, my 70-year-old mother was waiting for me at the door. I was so shocked that I almost dropped my keys. She has never come to see me before. Not even when I bought my condo, when I got my major promotion, or when I moved into my first apartment, but here she was, standing at my door as if she had every right to be there, looking older and more worn out than I remembered. "Mom," I said, barely raising my voice above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" She took a while to respond. She simply stared at me, her gaze sweeping across my face as if she had never seen me before. Perhaps she was. When she eventually stated, "We need to talk," her tone was forceful but gentle. "It's not good for your father. The physicians say." She trailed off, tears welling up in her eyes. I experienced a little twinge of guilt. I was unaware that my dad was ill. Then I realized that I hadn't known since they hadn't informed me. Because unless they require anything from me, they never tell me anything. I inhaled deeply, bracing myself. "I'm sorry to hear that," I added, being trying to sound impartial. "But I don't see what that has to do with me." My mom's eyes became wide with surprise. "He's your dad," she cried out. "How can you say that?" "Is he?" The venom in my voice surprised me as I shot back. When has he ever acted like a father to me? I briefly believed my mother might try to enter when she moved forward. I remained steadfast in the doorway, preventing her from entering. I wasn't going to give her access to my personal space or the life I had created for myself. "Please," she begged, her voice adopting the guilty tone I so vividly recalled from my early years. "You are necessary. I am unable to manage things on my own because your father is constantly in and out of the hospital. Your siblings." "My siblings?" I interrupted her. "My siblings always." "Mom, what about me? At what point did you need me for myself rather than what I could provide for everyone else?" She gave me the impression that I had slapped her. "That's not fair," she remarked. "You have always been cherished by us. We have always supported you." I was unable to resist. I chuckled. The sound reverberated along the deserted corridor, loud and terrible. "Are you there for me? When? You forgot my birthdays. When? When did you miss my final debate? When did you not attend my graduation from college? Please let me know exactly when you were there for me, Mom." I briefly had a surge of gratification when my mother's face crumbled. She was at last experiencing a small portion of the suffering I had endured for years. She said, "We did the best we could." With a broken voice. "You have no idea how it was to attempt to keep everyone alive and well. There was no time for it, I concluded. For me, for her. I wasn't ill, so you didn't have time for me. Since I wasn't creating issues, due to the fact that I was invisible. For a long time the burden of decades of unsaid hurt hung between us as we stood there in quiet. When my mother eventually responded, "I'm sorry," I briefly thought she was telling the truth. That's not how we intended to make you feel. You are loved by us. You are necessary to us. Come home please. Assist us. My eyes pricked with tears, but I blinked them away. My family has brought me enough tears. I can't, I stated firmly. I refuse to. Now Mom, I have a life of my own, one I created without you. I won't sacrifice that to serve as your contingency plan. Backup plan? She asked again, raising her voice. Do you believe this to be that? We are your family. I answered, no. And even I was astonished by how definitive my voice sounded. You aren't, no longer. I decided to choose my family. My friends, who have helped me, who have stood by me, who have seen me when you had no desire to look. With a look of disbelief and hurt on her face, my mother gazed at me. She remarked, so that's it. You're just going to turn your back on us? I gave a head shake. No, Mother. It's been a while since you abandoned me. I'm simply leaving at last. She didn't answer. Rather, she turned and strode off, her shoulders hunched in surrender. I was both relieved and saddened as I watched her leave. It seemed like the end of something. Possibly the loss of hope and the hope that my parents would one day see me and show me the kind of love I needed. That should be the end of it, I thought. I believed I had stated my stance clearly. However, as usual, life had other ideas. My brother called me a week following my mother's visit. His words, my father passed away. I sat there looking at my phone, not sure if I should feel guilty, relieved or sad. The news seemed to be about a stranger rather than my own father, and I felt numb. According to my brother, the funeral is next week. Will you come? After closing my eyes and inhaling deeply, I answered, no, I don't think I will. The other end of the line was silent for a long time. My brother finally answered, I understand. And I was shocked to hear that he didn't sound judgmental. Take care of yourself, sis. I sat for a while after I hung up, reflecting about my early years, my father, and our unfulfilled connection. I recognized that I no longer needed his attention and praise after reflecting on all the times I had wanted for it. I've devoted a significant portion of my life to gaining my family's affection and attention. In actuality, though, I no longer require their approval. I am proud of the life I have created for myself. I have a career I'm enthusiastic about, friends who adore me, and a sense of self-worth independent of other people's opinions. The passing of my father feels like the end of a chapter, a depressing one, full of unmet words and lost chances. However, it's already over, and I can't alter it. I just have to keep going. I will not be attending the funeral. Neither my mother nor my siblings will be contacted. It's not because I'm angry or spiteful. I've moved on from it. It's just that I've come to the realization that I no longer belong in that environment. I've outgrown it. I want those who might criticize me for my choice to realize that it has nothing to do with forgiveness or the lack of it. It has to do with protecting oneself. It's about realizing that sometimes walking away is the healthiest course of action and that some relationships are too damaged to be repaired. I'm no longer upset. I'm not depressed. I'm just free from the burden of unmet expectations, free from the hurt of being ignored and underappreciated, and free to live my life as I see fit without the dysfunctional shadow of my family hovering over me. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has followed my story and provided encouragement and guidance. During one of the most trying times in my life, your comments have given me courage and consolation. You've given me the confidence to advocate for myself and put my needs ahead of those of others. My last update will be this one. I'm concentrating on my future from now on, one that I can control and that is unencumbered by the burdens of my past. In some ways, it's frightening, but it's also quite freeing. I want to let everyone know that it's acceptable to make your own decisions, especially if they are in a similar circumstance, are having trouble meeting expectations from family, or feel unnoticed or underappreciated. Even if the ties are with family, it's acceptable to leave them if they are hurting you. You are worthy of being appreciated, seen, and loved for who you are. One final time, I want to thank you all for being the encouraging group of people I never had as a child. You can never know how much your understanding and kindness have meant. I survived an accident, but my family's betrayal hurts more. 3 years of silence, lies, and a crossroads for reconciliation. I, 35F, am in dire need of some guidance. I spent weeks in the hospital following a horrific vehicle accident 3 years ago. After a drunk truck driver crashed into my automobile, I suffered a fractured arm and had to spend a lengthy time recovering to regain my ability to walk. Even though the accident wasn't my fault, I'm still extremely cautious when driving even 3 years after it happened. The problem is that because my sister had gone into labor, my relatives did not come to my aid or offer me support during this trying time. Ironically, when the tragedy occurred, it was my route to surprise her at the hospital. I was employed at a company a couple hours away from my hometown at the time. I made the decision to surprise my sister after I received a call from my parents informing me that she was in labor and being taken to the hospital. I drove off after borrowing a friend's vehicle. I had an accident on the way there and was taken to the closest hospital. My friends and coworkers were the main people that helped me during my recuperation. At first, I could see why my parents were too busy with my sister and her infant. My parents didn't check on me though, even days after my sister gave birth. I contacted them several times while falling in and out of consciousness, frantically asking staff if my parents had visited or called, despite the pain. Each time I encountered disappointment. My parents finally gave me a call about a week after the accident. However, they asked why I had been phoning them so much rather than how I was doing. They were with my sister, so apparently they had been ignoring my calls. Despite my surprise at their harshness, I inquired about my sister's and the baby's well-being. They didn't even ask how I was feeling. They just said that both of them were okay. My buddies told me that they had contacted my parents via every available channel to alert them of my accident. My parents didn't inquire about me though. In an attempt to raise some awareness, I disclosed the information myself. Rather, they acknowledged that they already knew but decided not to reply because they thought my sister's needs should come first. Why couldn't they even pretend to care? I asked. At that point, they admitted to deliberately ignoring me. They thought my sister's birth was more significant than my injury, which they said I caused myself. I couldn't understand. It was a drunk truck driver who caused the accident, not me. However, they made it clear that they weren't referring to the truck driver. They accused me of being irresponsible for choosing to drive at such a late hour. They argued it was still unnecessary for me to do such a thing and that I was solely responsible for the accident when I explained that I was actually driving to the hospital to be there for my sister. That was a truly awful and inconsiderate thing for them to say. I hung up on them without saying anything else because I was so angry. I later learned from the hospital personnel that my parents were the first people called when emergency services spotted me at the scene of the accident and dialed 911. They had declined to appear and even asked not to be contacted over it in the future. Because I had my employee ID on me, the hospital subsequently got in touch with my place of employment, which is how my friends and coworkers learned about it. Finding out that rescue personnel had not bothered to arrive after being notified that their daughter had been involved in a catastrophic accident was even more disheartening. Even though I was only attempting to support my sister and the family, their sole reaction to the situation was to hold me responsible for what transpired. After that episode, I came to the realization that my family had no interest in supporting me, even though I wanted to be there for them. After that, not even my sister had bothered to get in touch with me. I really gave up on my family after that episode, so I haven't spoken to them in 3 years. I believed that our connection was normal previous to the accident, but I had always felt that my sister and her priorities took precedence over me. This was verified in the worst conceivable way by the accident. To be clear, I wasn't angry that they didn't come see me while my sister was in delivery. I was disappointed that they didn't feel it was necessary to see me even after my sister had given child. My sister was unable to visit me in the hospital at the time, so I didn't even anticipate her doing so. For my parents, however, it was not impossible. My sister was looked after by her in-laws and fiancé. All I had were my friends, but I was fortunate that they were supportive. They paid for my medical bills and supported me during my recuperation. Although I have yet to repay them, I am immensely appreciative of their generosity and assistance. I doubt I'll ever be able to pay them back in full. My family hasn't made an effort to get in touch with me, despite the fact that the incident occurred 3 years ago. Many members of the extended family have asked me why we are no longer together, but I have kept the answer to myself. I believed we had an unwritten agreement to keep this from other family members, and I followed it. But things have changed recently. My parents had begun discussing the incident in a way that portrayed me as the villain, so one of my aunts got in touch with me. This occurred a few weeks ago when my sister's promotion at work was celebrated with a family dinner hosted by my parents. The subject of my alienation from the family was raised throughout the meal. My parents ultimately made the decision to discuss it after much back and forth. They no longer believed that they had to keep it a secret. However, they altered the details of what transpired following my accident when telling the story. A few facts were accurate. I got into a car accident on the way to the hospital, where I had planned to surprise my sister. They asserted, however, that they were never notified and learned of the tragedy only a few days later. They said that a lot of time had gone by the time they learned, and they were too busy taking care of my sister and the baby to consider the reason I hadn't been in touch with them earlier. Additionally, they stated that they called me as soon as they found out about the accident, but I was too distraught to talk to them. That was not accurate at all. They continued by saying they had made multiple attempts to get in touch with me, but I had consistently turned them down. They said they eventually stopped attempting to contact me. In essence, they framed the entire incident as a miscommunication and portrayed me as the bad guy who had been harsh on them for their lack of concern. Despite my parents' explicit orders not to, my aunt, being the kind person she is, chose to get in touch with me. They said they didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but I knew they were lying to me about what had happened because they didn't want me to know. According to my aunt, I hadn't spoken to my parents in 3 years, and they were truly missing me. She added that I was losing out on the chance to be my niece's aunt and that she herself wouldn't pass up the chance. She advised me to get in touch with my folks. I phoned her back to get more information since I was perplexed. I was astonished when she told me what my folks had stated. Although it had been the other way around, they had portrayed themselves as the victims and me as the egotistical villain. When I learned what they had been telling the family about what had occurred all those years ago, I became enraged. I made the decision to talk to my aunt and be honest with her. In case she didn't believe me, I even promised to connect her with my friends who had paid for my medical bills. I clarified that since my accident my parents had lost all interest in me. Despite being contacted, they refused to be bothered. I informed her that I didn't even feel angry at them for putting my sister's needs first throughout her delivery since I recognized how important that was. Their total disregard after that was what irritated me. My parents didn't bother to check on me after my sister had birth and was surrounded by her in-laws and fiancé. My aunt was astonished to hear my side of the story and expressed regret for having doubted me. I was glad she had talked to me since I might not have known what my parents were talking about behind my back if she hadn't. I'm at a crossroads right now. Within the family, the truth about what transpired 3 years ago is beginning to surface. Numerous family members have contacted me to inform me that I had to tell my aunt about my experience. They claimed that I had every right to protect myself and that if I hadn't spoken up, my parents might have gotten away with their falsehoods. My parents' treatment of me was unfair and undeserved, and some family members have even begun to show sympathy for me, recognizing how terrible my experience was. In a way, I'm grateful to my aunt for hearing my side of the story and making sure my parents' version of events wasn't allowed to go unpunished. But this has also started to cause problems. The family started to distance themselves from my parents after they learned that I had spoken to my aunt and that she had told others the truth. They're now holding me responsible for the consequences. How any of this is my fault is beyond me. I only told my aunt, and even then, I only spoke the truth. It was she who made the decision to tell the other members of the family. My parents, however, are making me answerable for the results. In essence, they framed the entire incident as a miscommunication and portrayed me as the bad guy who had been utterly intolerant of their lack of concern. Despite being expressly told by my parents not to talk to me about this, my aunt, being the kind person that she is, chose to get in touch with me. I understood the true reason behind their assertion that they didn't want to make a big deal out of it. They didn't want anyone to talk to me because they didn't want me to discover that they had been lying about what actually occurred. 3 years had gone by since I last spoke to my parents, and my aunt called to let me know that they truly missed me. She claimed that I was losing out on the chance to be my niece's aunt, and she was aware that she wouldn't pass up such a chance. She therefore advised me to get in touch with my parents once more. I called her back and requested for additional information because I was so perplexed. I was startled when she told me what my parents had told them because they had framed me as the selfish villain and made themselves the victims, even though it had been the other way around. Hearing what they had told everyone in the family about what had transpired all those years ago infuriated me. I made the decision to talk to my aunt and be honest with her. In case she didn't want to trust me, I even offered to connect her with my friends who had paid for all of my costs. I was telling her the truth about what had actually occurred. I clarified that following my injury, my parents were the ones that truly didn't give a damn about me. They simply did not want to be bothered, even though they had been approached. Since my sister was giving birth, which was also very important at the moment, I wasn't even upset with them for choosing to be there for her. Even so, I became irate when they failed to make the effort to come for me. Even my aunt seemed somewhat surprised when I explained this to her, and she apologized to me for having doubts about me. I was quite grateful that she had chosen to talk to me since I doubt I would have ever learned what my parents were talking about behind my back. I'm at a crossroads right now. The family is beginning to come to terms with the reality of what transpired 3 years ago. Many individuals have been contacting me and telling me that it was vital for me to tell my aunt the truth. Otherwise, they claim, my parents could have gotten away with lying about what had transpired and painting me as the villain. Many family members have even begun to express sympathy for me, telling me that my parents should never have treated me that way and that what happened to me was truly terrible. They claim it was unjust and unworthy. In one sense, I owe my aunt a great deal for persuading others to listen to me and accept my version of events. If not, my parents' version of events would have been accepted. However, it has become rather problematic for me at the moment because the rest of the family began to turn away from my parents once they learned that I had discussed this with my aunt and that she had discussed it with others. Since all I did was tell folks the truth, I truly don't understand how any of this is my fault. I just told my aunt the truth, and she made the decision to tell everyone else. It would be inaccurate to even state that I told anyone the truth. In any case, they are blaming me for the current state of affairs because, at the moment, the family has essentially been avoiding them and no one wants to talk to them. This is bad because my niece's 3rd birthday, which also happens to be the 3rd anniversary of my injury, is being celebrated in a few weeks. They are currently worried that no one will show up for the birthday celebration now that the family has learned the truth. My niece is thrilled about her birthday celebration, and the whole family has been invited, so that will be somewhat disappointing. But as of yet, no one has replied to the invites, and some have already turned them down without even having to provide a reason. That's what's happening at the moment. My family hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, but they have reached out to me because of this circumstance. They have been attempting to call and text me nonstop. The majority of their messages accuse me of intentionally causing this problem in order to take my sister's attention, but I haven't answered any of their calls since I don't think it's relevant. My parents and even my sister seem to think that I'm intentionally doing this because I find it infuriating that they opted to be with my sister during her childbirth rather than with me. They believe that I'm taking retribution in this way. They even went so far as to affirm that they were certain I intentionally got into the automobile late that evening in order to gain attention. They said that because my sister was giving birth and receiving all of the family's attention, I was envious of her. That's such a cruel, awful thing to say. No matter how much I could despise someone, I can't even fathom thinking that way about them. It's awful to be implied that I intentionally created the disaster in order to get sympathy and attention from my family. Furthermore, they are accusing me of attention-seeking even now, claiming that they are aware that I couldn't bear it when I learned that my sister had gotten a promotion at work and was doing well in her life. They therefore think I made the conscious choice to bring up and negatively portray historical events. They knew exactly what they were attempting to do, so I don't even see why they would say something like that. The hypocrisy of their actions, which were just what they were accusing me of, infuriates me. Since they first attempted to get in touch with me, I have continued to block their numbers and disregard all of their messages. But I don't know what to do next. Do I have to confront them about their falsehoods? Do I have to keep ignoring them and let the family issue work itself out? For the sake of my niece, who is innocent in all of this, should I try to patch things up? I could use some guidance on how to deal with this chaotic family scenario because I'm terribly conflicted. First update. Since my last post, which was approximately 2 weeks ago, things have significantly become worse. Even though I'm still processing all that has transpired, I feel compelled to give you all this update. My folks unexpectedly dropped by my apartment a few days ago. After 3 years of no communication, I was startled to see them at my door. I initially believed they could have come to apologize, but I couldn't have been more mistaken. They began screaming at me as soon as I answered the door and accused me of purposefully attempting to damage their family's name. "How dare you spread lies about us," my father said, pointing his finger at me in a fit of rage. They refused to listen to me when I tried to clarify that I had just given my aunt the truth. My mother said that I was trying to punish them for supporting my sister throughout her delivery because I was jealous of her. They refused to leave when I ordered them to. My dad took a step forward, raising his voice. "You must clean up the mess you made. Because of the lies you've propagated, no one wants to go to your niece's upcoming birthday party." I lost it at that point. They were the ones who had been dishonest and had deserted me when I needed them most, I shouted back. My father stepped in the way when I attempted to shut the door. We were instantly engaged in a physical altercation as he pressed against the door. I gave him a hefty shove back in the heat of the moment. He staggered back, almost toppled over. I noticed a mixture of astonishment and horror in my mother's eyes as she yelled. We all remained there for a while, panting. The truth of what had happened beginning to set in. My father turned and remarked, "This isn't over," before they finally left. "You'll be sorry you did this." I sobbed after they were gone. I was crying and trembling from the shock of what had transpired. I've never been violent, So I was afraid that things had gotten to the point where they were physical. I was inundated with texts from different family members the following day. When my parents came to make peace, they apparently told everyone that I had attacked them brutally. I was portrayed by them as dangerous and unstable. I received texts from several family members who were disappointed since they thought they were real. Some, who were more dubious, contacted me to inquire about my version of events. I told people the whole truth and was honest with them. In a particularly nasty communication, my sister advised me to avoid her and her daughter. I feel confused and overburdened. Even if it was only a shove, I know I shouldn't have used physical force. However, I also feel as though I was forced into a difficult situation and had to respond to their violence. I'm concerned about the possible legal repercussions. Could they file assault charges? Do I need to report harassment? The family has never been more split. Some people are adamantly on my side, some are on my parents' side, and some are in the center, not knowing which side to believe. With individuals taking sides over whether or not to attend, the approaching birthday celebration for my niece has turned into a contentious issue. I struggle with guilt as well. Although I am aware that my parents' actions were wrong, I sometimes question whether I ought to have handled the situation differently. My emotional state is a complete mess, even though my logical side understands I was defending myself. All of this has been made possible by my friends' tremendous support. They've been taking turns checking in on me and have offered to let me stay with them if I feel insecure in my apartment. To help me deal with everything, the accident 3 years ago, my family's rejection, and now this confrontation, I'm thinking of going to therapy. My mental health is suffering as a result of everything. I've made the decision to update my email address and phone number for the time being. In case my parents try to visit, I've also let my employer know about the issue. From here, how do I proceed? Should I think about taking legal action to defend myself? What should I do with my relatives who now perceive me as the antagonist in this tale? And above all, how do I begin to recover from this trauma? Second update. About a week has passed since my last update, and somehow things with my family have gotten even more problematic. My niece's third birthday celebration, which ended up being a total bust, was the most important occasion. According to my aunt who was present at the celebration, just a small number of people attended, primarily members of my sister's close family and a few of her acquaintances. Because of the ongoing tension, the great bulk of the extended family decided to avoid it. From the beginning, the mood was extremely tight. My sister was about to cry, my parents were clearly under stress, and my niece kept inquiring about everyone's whereabouts. Things reached a breaking point halfway through the celebration when my mother sobbed and openly accused me of destroying everything and destroying the family. People who were more sympathetic to my side of the story and those who supported my parents got into a fight as a result. With all the yelling and bad vibes, my niece broke down in tears as well. After losing it, my sister yelled at everyone to leave, accusing them of ruining her daughter's birthday. The visitors shuffled awkwardly out as the party came to an abrupt stop. This makes me feel terrible. I feel guilty even though I know logically that I'm not to blame for this. I'm also upset that my parents continue to try to make me the bad guy in all of this. The family has never been more split. There are some in the middle who are fed up with the whole thing, while others are on my side and fully supporting my parents. Over the last 24 hours, I've gotten a variety of texts. While some family members have sent me heartfelt notes accusing me of being responsible for the party disaster, others have offered their support. In a particularly unpleasant email, my sister told me that she no longer considers herself to have a sister and that she never wants to see or speak to me again. I cannot describe how much those remarks stung. I still adore my sister and niece in spite of everything. I'm having trouble figuring out how to proceed from here. A part of me wants to get in touch with my sister and attempt to explain my position again, but another part of me questions whether it would be better to honor her desires and keep my distance, at least for the time being. I have no idea about my parents. I'm sick of the ongoing drama and suffering, but I also want to face them and force them to admit the harm they've caused. As suggested by many of you, I have been attending therapy sessions. Even if it's early, having a professional to discuss all of this with feels fantastic. She is trying to provide me with the skills I need to establish healthy boundaries with my family while also assisting me in overcoming my feelings of guilt and rage. One thing the therapist stated that truly resonated with me was that it's acceptable to put my own mental health and well-being first, even if it meant putting my family at a distance. She emphasized that I'm not accountable for my sister's or parents' behavior and that it is neither healthy nor normal. It's difficult, but I'm trying to take that seriously. Emotional manipulation and family dynamics that have existed for years don't go away quickly. I continue to question whether there was anything I could have done better or if there was a way to stop all of this from occurring. However, I then remind myself of the reality. That accident wasn't anything I asked for. I didn't ask for my family to leave me when I most needed them. Furthermore, I didn't invite them to come to my door and level charges or to misrepresent what had happened. When asked, I only told the truth. So what should I do next? I'm thinking of writing a letter to the entire family to express my truth one final time before removing myself from the matter, not to defend myself or level accusations. Perhaps things would settle down if I express my disinterest in carrying on with this drama. My niece is also on my mind. I wonder whether I should save money for my sister's future, even though she doesn't want me in their lives right now. Perhaps I should create a college fund or something she can use as she gets older. How can all of this bring me peace? How can I emotionally safeguard myself while still maintaining the possibility of future reconciliation? And how can I get over my guilt about something I didn't cause? I appreciate your support, everyone. Having a location where I can discuss all of this and receive unbiased feedback matters more than you can imagine. For now, I'm going to concentrate on getting better and taking things one day at a time, but I'll keep you informed of any significant developments. Third update. About a week has passed since my last update, and I'm still getting used to all that has transpired. I appreciate all of your ongoing help and guidance. The most significant event is that yesterday, I got an email from my parents. When I saw it in my inbox, I was taken aback. I didn't think I'd hear from them after all this time, especially after the disastrous birthday celebration. An apology opened the email. Both in the immediate aftermath of my injury 3 years ago and in the more recent altercations, my parents admitted that they had handled the matter badly. They acknowledged that they should not have disregarded my cries for assistance and that they had erred in putting my sister's needs ahead of their own when I was in the hospital. They also expressed regret for coming to my apartment and starting a physical altercation. My father acknowledged that his harsh behavior was inappropriate and expressed sincere regret for it. They also acknowledged that they had misled the family about what had occurred. They claimed to be embarrassed of what they had done and to have come to see the harm their falsehoods had done to the whole family, not just to me. The email clarified that they had learned their lesson from the tragic birthday party. They realized the seriousness of their acts after witnessing the division in the family and the impact they had on my niece. They claimed that after reflecting deeply for the previous week, they had come to the conclusion that it was time to take responsibility for their errors. I had a range of emotions after reading this email. I felt a mixture of emotions, including a sense of vindication, anger at the length of time it had taken, and a glimmer of optimism that perhaps we could save our relationship. Mostly though, I felt torn. I've been waiting for this apology for the past 3 years. They appear to be taking full responsibility for their conduct, and it looks honest. However, I can't help but question whether it's too little, too late. An email cannot quickly undo years of suffering and betrayal because of the deep-seated grief they have inflicted. A request to meet in person to discuss the matter was made at the end of the email. They stated they hope that one day I'll be willing to give them an opportunity to make amends face-to-face, but they understand if I'm not ready for that. I still haven't replied. While I'm afraid of exposing myself to additional hurt, I also want to agree to meet them to see if there's any chance of repairing our friendship. I had a physical argument with them the previous time I saw them. After talking with my therapist about the email, she advised me to take my time answering. If I do choose to meet, she advised, it could be beneficial to do so in a neutral setting, perhaps with a mediator in attendance. In addition, my sister and niece have been on my mind. According to my parents' email, they have been honest with my sister about what transpired and have urged her to get in touch with me. I haven't heard from her yet. Even though I really miss her and my niece, I understand that I must give them space for the time being. It seems that my parents have apologized for their lies and explained the matter in a mass email to the rest of the family. Some family members have messaged me to give their support and to express their amazement at the news. I'm at a crossroads now. Should I strive to mend our relationship after accepting my parents' apology? Do I keep my distance for my own psychological well-being? Is it possible for me to appreciate their efforts without completely reintegrating them into my life just yet? In addition, I'm struggling with my own sense of duty and guilt. There is a part of me that questions whether I could have handled things differently, even though I know rationally that I'm not to fault for this circumstance. I'm making an effort to concentrate on my own recovery and development going forward. To help control my stress and anxiety, I've started mindfulness meditation and am still in treatment. I've also been considering changing my life for the better. I'm thinking about looking for a new job, maybe in a different city, to give myself a fresh start and some physical separation from all of this drama, not to escape my troubles. I have made the decision to establish a college fund for my niece. It seems like the appropriate thing to do, regardless of whether my sister wants to stay in touch with me. Perhaps when she's older, She'll realize how much I've always loved her. From here, how do I proceed? How can I strike a balance between the need to emotionally safeguard myself and the prospect of reconciliation? And with all of this, how can I begin to reconstruct my life and identity? Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support along this trip. For me, your counsel and encouraging remarks have been invaluable. Although I have no idea what the future will bring, knowing that this community is supporting me makes me feel a little more prepared to face it.
Should I set clear boundaries with my boyfriend regarding his quickly blossoming relationship with a female coworker? The evening air was crisp, holding a hint of autumn's chill as I walked across the sprawling campus of the university. It was a time marked by youthful dreams and scholarly pursuits, a period that now seems both distant and vividly close to my heart. It was here, amidst the hallowed halls and buzzing student centers, that I first met Brian. He was, like me, a newcomer to the intricate world of graduate studies, eager to carve out a niche in the academic world. Our initial encounter was as unremarkable as it was fortuitous, occurring during a mandatory orientation for incoming students. I remember the room was overly warm, filled with the nervous energy of dozens of students. Brian sat next to me, introduced by a mutual acquaintance who had prematurely left to answer a call. Left alone, we struck up a conversation, initially threading through the safe territories of our academic interests and backgrounds. He was a student of environmental science, passionate about renewable energy, while I pursued sociology, driven by a desire to understand the undercurrents of human interactions. Our fields were different, yet complementary, a theme that would underscore much of our future together. In the weeks that followed, our paths crossed with increasing frequency, often at the university library or during various group projects. Our friendship blossomed effortlessly. We shared long debates over cups of lukewarm coffee, challenging each other's perspectives and, often, discovering our shared values. Brian's intellect was matched by his kindness and humor, a combination that pulled me into a circle of comfort and laughter. There was an ease between us, a silent acknowledgement of mutual respect and admiration that deepened with time. As our second year of graduate school commenced, circumstances led us to become roommates. The decision was practical at its core, motivated by our compatible living habits and the convenience of sharing rent. Yet, living together brought a new depth to our friendship. Our evenings were filled with shared meals and continued debates, our academic passions spilling over into every conversation. We were both ambitious, driven not just by personal goals but by a desire to make a meaningful impact on the world. It was during one particularly poignant evening, as winter whispered through thin walls, that our relationship took a romantic turn. We had been discussing a group project when a sudden power outage plunged the apartment into darkness. In the soft glow of candlelight, our conversation shifted from academic to personal. Vulnerabilities were shared between shadows, and I saw in Brian a profound emotional depth. The line between friendship and something more blurred, and we found ourselves drawn together not just by intellectual compatibility but by a burgeoning emotional connection. Our transition from friends to partners felt as natural as it was inevitable. We continued to share an apartment, now not just as roommates but as a couple. The dynamics shifted subtly. Where there had once been 2 beds, there now stood one. Our discussions still ranged from the professional to the profoundly silly, but they were now punctuated by moments of tenderness, by shared smiles and soft touches that spoke of a deeper bond. When graduate school ended, reality ushered in challenges. We found jobs in different states, and for a brief period, our relationship was stretched across miles of separation. The long-distance phase was trying, filled with longing and the frustration of connecting through screens. Yet our foundation was solid, built on years of trust and understanding. We learned to communicate in new ways, keeping our connection alive through daily calls and texts, counting down the days until we could be together again. The decision for Brian to move states and join me was a testament to the strength of our commitment. It was a leap of faith, leaving behind his established life to build a new one with me. I remember the day he arrived, his car filled with boxes and a hopeful smile gracing his lips. It was a pivotal moment, one that marked the beginning of a new chapter for us. Now, we live together in our own apartment, a cozy space that is distinctly ours. It's a place filled with laughter, occasional debates, and plans for the future. We cook together, experimenting with recipes and laughing at our culinary misadventures. Evenings are spent curled up on the couch, sharing our days or lost in a movie or book. We support each other's careers, understanding the pressures and triumphs, always ready to offer encouragement or a listening ear. Brian is more than just my partner, he is my best friend, the person I plan to spend the rest of my life with. Our relationship is built on a deep mutual respect and love, on shared values and dreams. We talk often about the future, about marriage and the life we hope to build. With each passing day, my anticipation for a proposal grows, Not out of expectation, but from a deep-seated knowledge of our readiness to embark on that journey together. As I reflect on our relationship, from its humble beginnings on the university campus to the life we are building together, I am filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the laughter, the support, and the love that fills our days. It's a relationship rooted in friendship, strengthened by challenges, and blossoming with promise. In Brian, I have found a partner, a confidant, and a love that feels as destined as it is profound. Brian's transition into a new job was a breath of fresh air after our reunion. As he adapted to his new role, his stories about work and colleagues became a regular part of our evening conversations. Among the names that started to pop up was Liz's. Initially, she was just another coworker he mentioned in passing, a project they collaborated on, a shared laugh over a coffee break mishap. It was normal, the kind of workday interactions you'd expect in any office setting. Liz seemed to quickly become a notable figure in his daily recounts. Liz has this incredible knack for organizing things, Brian would say, or, Liz brought in these amazing muffins today. It was all very innocuous, the typical budding workplace friendship. I learned she had worked with an organization closely linked to mine, which added layers of small world charm to their interactions. She knows Sarah from your team, Brian mentioned one night, and I found it funny how interconnected our worlds seemed. My reaction to Liz was shaped by trust, a trust that was deep-seated in the fabric of our relationship. Having seen Brian maintain friendships with women throughout our years together, I had little reason for concern. He had always been transparent about these friendships, and there had been several instances where he hung out with female friends without me. Each time, he shared his plans openly, often encouraging me to join if I was available. There was only ever one exception, a friend from his past that I hadn't felt comfortable about, but upon expressing my feelings, Brian immediately adjusted his boundaries with her. That gesture had solidified my trust further, reassuring me that our relationship came first. This history laid a foundation of confidence as Liz became a more frequent topic. When Brian mentioned that Liz wanted to meet me, it felt like a positive step. She thinks it'd be great to get all of us together, a mini get-together, he suggested. Liz's presence was introduced with the utmost normalcy. She was just a friend, a co-worker, and nothing more. She had a fiancé. They were planning their life together, mirroring in some ways the life that Brian and I were building. This parallel comforted me, painting Liz as someone who was walking a path similar to ours. My comfort with the situation was a testament to the strength and openness of our relationship. Brian's stories about Liz were transparent and regular, filled with mundane details and work-related anecdotes. They brought a sense of normalcy to his new job environment, a place where he was still planting his roots. In the grand tapestry of our lives, Liz was just another thread, adding color and texture, but not disrupting the pattern we had so carefully woven together. As the weeks slipped by, a pattern began to emerge in our daily exchanges. Brian's new job was going well, and his enthusiasm was palpable, but so was the frequency of his mentions of Liz. It started subtly, comments about her contributions in meetings, her insights on projects they were working on together. However, as days turned into weeks, Liz's presence in our conversations grew more pronounced. One evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, Brian brought up a new development. Liz suggested we start carpooling, he said, drying a plate nonchalantly. He explained that Liz lived nearby in a temporary apartment due to her fiancé's job, which often required them to relocate. It makes sense, We're both heading the same way, and it could save us both some time and gas money. The office was about a 30-minute drive without traffic, but morning rush hour stretched it to nearly 45 minutes each way. I nodded, understanding the practicality of it, yet a knot formed in my stomach. Carpooling meant they would be spending at least an hour and a half together alone every day they headed into the office. My mind raced with questions I didn't voice. Would their conversations stray from work? Would this closeness breed a familiarity that edged into more personal territory? He mentioned it would only be for 2 to 3 days a week, depending on their office days and fieldwork. It's just an idea for now, he assured me with a smile. I forced a smile back, pushing my unease aside. The first day he actually picked her up, he mentioned it casually as he grabbed his keys. Okay, I'm going to go pick up Liz and head into work. I was caught off guard, not realizing they had decided to start. When he returned home that evening, it was as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred, and he didn't bring it up again. According to him, it wasn't a regular arrangement, but the seed of discomfort had been planted. The situation escalated unexpectedly. While we were enjoying a quiet evening watching a movie, Brian casually mentioned that Liz and her fiancé were looking for a more permanent place to live. They're actually interested in our building, he said, almost as an afterthought. They're coming to see it tomorrow. I paused the movie, turning to look at him. Our building was a coveted spot in downtown, known for its amenities and prime location, but it was also one of many. The news unsettled me. The proximity felt too close for comfort. The next day, I saw them briefly in the elevator, being shown around by management. They were polite, and the meeting was brief, but the reality of them moving into our building started to sink in. That evening, Brian received a text from Liz. "They decided to rent here," he announced, a note of happiness in his voice that I couldn't mirror. The proximity meant more shared rides, more interactions, and an intimacy that was too close for my comfort. From then on, mentions of Liz weren't just frequent. They became a daily occurrence. They texted and called, discussing work or their apartments. Brian was transparent about these interactions, always open about the context of their conversations, yet the frequency made me uneasy. I didn't see his phone often, so the depth and tone of their exchanges were unknown to me, cloaked in the veil of work-related chats. As I lay in bed one night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but feel a shift. The ease that once defined our evenings was now punctuated by the subtle presence of someone else. My mind raced with uncertainties and what-ifs. Was I being unreasonable? Was the threat I perceived real or just a shadow cast by overthinking? These thoughts swirled in my mind, a quiet storm brewing over what seemed like practical, innocent arrangements. The foundation of trust we had built our relationship upon was trembling under the weight of my insecurities, and I knew a conversation loomed on the horizon. A conversation where my fears and feelings would have to be voiced, where the strength of our relationship would be tested by the complexities of human connections and boundaries yet to be defined. The unsettling feeling that had slowly begun to plant its roots within me started to sprout as days turned into weeks. It wasn't just the car rides anymore. Brian's phone would buzz more frequently than before, the screen lighting up with Liz's name. They were small interactions, at least as Brian explained them. Questions about a project or a quick confirmation about something work-related. Yet, each buzz seemed to echo louder in the quiet of our shared space, ringing with the potential of something I couldn't quite name but felt deeply. One afternoon stood out, a day when the thin veil of my discomfort was pierced by a moment so trivial yet so profound in its impact. We were at my parents' house for a family lunch, a rare gathering that brought warmth and laughter into the late summer air. Amidst the clinking of cutlery and the hum of conversation, Brian's phone rang. He glanced at it, excused himself, and stepped out into the garden. I watched him through the window, phone to his ear, a frown of concentration etched across his face. When he returned, sliding back into his seat as if nothing had happened, curiosity got the better of me. "Who was it?" I asked casually, passing him a bowl of salad. "Oh, it was Liz," he responded without meeting my eyes. Just some questions because they were moving in at the time. The simplicity of his answer did nothing to soothe the flurry of questions swirling in my mind. Why hadn't he mentioned it right away? Was there a reason he needed to take the call outside? This incident lodged itself in my thoughts, a splinter that irritated with each passing moment. My trust, once solid and unwavering, now felt like a tapestry fraying at the edges, threads of doubt weaving through its once pristine surface. These feelings deepened a few days later when we drove Brian to the airport. As we approached the drop-off zone, I ventured a question, trying to keep my voice light. "You're just taking an Uber back home, right?" His hesitation was slight but noticeable. "I was actually going to see if maybe Liz could pick me up, so I don't have to spend money on an Uber," he admitted. And I could hear the casual practicality in his voice, a stark contrast to the tightening in my chest. My response was measured, reminding him gently that Liz and her fiancé were busy moving. He considered this, nodding in agreement, and settled on the Uber instead. But the seed of discomfort had already sprouted into a gnarling vine, winding its way around my heart. The ease with which he had thought to call Liz, his slight hesitation, and the potential implications of such a decision played over in my mind during the silent drive back home. In the solitude of our apartment, I found myself increasingly wrestling with my feelings. The trust that I so cherished seemed to be under siege by these small, seemingly inconsequential moments. Each text, each call, each decision that subtly included Liz felt like a small chip away from the foundation we had built. Was I being unreasonable? Was my discomfort rooted in jealousy, or was it a signal of something more? A boundary being crossed without my consent? The internal debate was exhausting. Part of me wanted to dismiss these feelings, to chalk them up to overthinking, to the insecurity that perhaps all relationships face at one point or another. But another part, a more visceral, instinctive part, clung to these concerns with a tenacity that surprised me. It wasn't just about Liz, it was about us, about me and Brian and the invisible lines that define what is comfortable and what is not in our relationship. As the days passed, these thoughts did not ebb but grew stronger, fueled by each small interaction that Brian shared with Liz. I found myself observing him, watching for signs, for any indication that what I felt was grounded in reality, and not just in my fears. It was a silent vigil, one that kept me awake at night, my eyes tracing the shadows on the ceiling, my mind replaying each day's interactions. After days of wrestling with my unease, I realized that silence was no longer an option. The weight of unspoken thoughts was too heavy, and it was time to clear the air, for the sake of our relationship which I treasured above all. One evening, as we sat side by side on our soft lived-in couch, I turned off the television, needing his full attention for this conversation. "Brian, can we talk?" My voice was shaky, betraying the nerves I felt. He looked at me, his expression turning serious as he muted the TV. "Of course, what's up?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "It's about Liz," I started, hesitating slightly. "I've been feeling a bit uncomfortable with how close you two have gotten recently. It's not that I don't trust you, but..." My voice trailed off, unsure how to express the turmoil inside without sounding accusatory. Brian turned to face me fully, his brows furrowed in concern. "Hey, I didn't realize you felt that way. I'm sorry, it's just been work stuff mostly. Liz is just a friend, you know that, right?" "I do, I really do. But it's not just the friendship. It's the time you spend together, carpooling, the phone calls. It feels like a lot, and sometimes I feel left out," I admitted, my heart pounding as I laid my vulnerabilities bare. He reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel left out. Liz and I do talk about work, and since she's new in town, I guess I've been trying to make her feel welcome." I nodded, appreciating his honesty. "I understand that, and I appreciate you helping her. Maybe we could all hang out together. I'd love to meet her fiancé too. It might help me feel more comfortable about everything." Brian's face brightened at the suggestion. "That's a great idea. I'll set something up. How about we all go out for drinks this weekend?" "Sounds perfect," I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The mere act of discussing these feelings was like letting air out of a ballooning pressure inside me. The weekend came swiftly, and we met Liz and her fiancé, Tom, at a local bar known for its cozy atmosphere and good music. The initial greetings were somewhat awkward, the air tinged with my own anxieties about how the evening would go. However, as we settled into our seats and ordered drinks, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Liz was warm and engaging, and Tom was friendly with a good sense of humor that complemented Brian's. Liz and I found common ground in our professional interests, and to my surprise, we shared a love for old jazz music, which the bar was softly playing in the background. "You have great taste in music," Liz complimented, her smile genuine. "Thanks. Brian mentioned you're planning your wedding. How's that going?" I asked, genuinely interested. "It's been fun but hectic. Tom's been a huge help though," Liz replied, her eyes twinkling as she glanced at Tom, who gave a mock bow of acknowledgement. As the night progressed, laughter filled our table. Any remnants of awkwardness dissolved into the mirth of discovering new friendships. Brian and Tom debated over sports, while Liz and I discussed everything from wedding plans to our favorite books. By the end of the evening, it felt like we had all known each other for much longer than a few hours. Plans were made for future outings, and Brian and I walked home hand in hand, a new ease between us. Over the next few months, Liz and I grew closer. We started a routine of having lunch together once a week, and she and Tom often joined us for movie nights or weekend brunches. Our conversations meandered from professional topics to personal dreams and challenges. Liz opened up about the struggles of moving frequently for Tom's job, and I shared my experiences of managing work-life balance. One particularly memorable evening, we all participated in a local trivia night. Teamwork had never been so hilarious, with each of us bringing our quirks and knowledge to the table. We didn't win, but as we sat laughing over our absurdly wrong answers, I realized how deeply these new connections had enriched our lives. It wasn't just about getting to know Liz better, it was about understanding Brian's world from another perspective, about intertwining our lives with others in meaningful ways. My fears and insecurities had not just been eased, they had been transformed into opportunities for growth and friendship. Our relationships with Liz and Tom added new layers to our social dynamics, creating a supportive network that transcended mere acquaintance. It was during these months that I learned not just to trust Brian, but to trust in the resilience of our bond, understanding that it could stretch to include others without weakening. As I reflect on those initial fears, they seem like distant echoes now, overshadowed by the laughter, support and camaraderie we've built together. It's strange how life unfolds, how situations that once seemed so daunting become the pathways to richer, more colorful experiences. In learning to voice my concerns, in navigating through my insecurities, I found not just peace but a deeper connection to Brian, and a friendship in Liz that I now cherish. Our story, marked by a simple conversation that one evening, reminds me continually of the power of communication, honesty, and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. Update. It was an evening like no other. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, as Brian and I headed out for what I thought was just another lovely dinner date. Little did I know, it was the night that would change our lives forever. As we arrived at the restaurant, I noticed Brian seemed unusually nervous, his hands slightly trembling as he held the door open for me. The atmosphere was intimate. A small, elegantly decorated place known for its incredible views of the city skyline. Over dinner, we reminisced about our journey together, from college friends to life partners, each memory laced with laughter and shared dreams. Despite the beautiful setting and perfect conversation, I couldn't help but notice Brian's distracted glances and the deep breaths he took as if bracing himself. I attributed it to work stress, not wanting to pry or disturb the evening's magic. When we returned home, the sight that greeted me left me breathless. Our apartment was transformed into a glowing sanctuary, adorned with hundreds of roses and candles that cast a soft romantic light across the walls. My heart raced as I took in the scene, my hands covering my mouth in disbelief. There, in the midst of this fairy tale setting, Brian got down on one knee, his eyes shining with emotion. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded, whispering a joyful, "Yes." We embraced, the candles flickering around us, and I felt a surge of love so strong it seemed to fill the entire room. The next hours were a blur of happy tears, laughter, and excited phone calls to friends and family, sharing the news of our engagement. As the excitement of the evening settled, Brian shared with me how it all came together, revealing a surprise that made the night even more special. Liz, his co-worker and our new friend, had been instrumental in planning the proposal. He explained that because of her proximity, living just a few floors away in our building, he had been able to coordinate all the deliveries secretly. The flowers, candles, champagne, and even the ring had been at Liz's apartment, safely hidden from my curious eyes. She even held onto the ring the week before I proposed. Brian chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief at the secrecy required. I couldn't have pulled this off without her help. The following day, Liz came up to our apartment to congratulate us personally. Her eyes were misty as she hugged us both, and she took out her camera to capture the moment. It was then, seeing her genuine happiness for us, that I fully grasped the depth of her kindness and friendship. What I had initially perceived as a threat had blossomed into an invaluable bond. She had not only respected our relationship but had actively helped celebrate it. This revelation was profound. It underscored how essential open communication had been throughout the entire process, from addressing my insecurities about their friendship to involving her in such a pivotal moment in our lives. It taught me that the fears and discomfort I had felt were natural, but that confronting them openly could lead to outcomes far beyond what I might have expected. Over the next few months, as Brian and I dove into wedding planning, Liz became an even greater part of our lives. We shared tips, vendor recommendations, and endless Pinterest boards. Our girls' nights became regular fixtures, filled with wedding talk and mutual support. Liz and I planned our weddings together, reveling in the joy of crafting our perfect days, and through it all, our friendship deepened. Looking back, I am amazed at how things unfolded. What began as a period of uncertainty and fear transformed into a chapter filled with love, friendship, and understanding. Liz and I, once potential rivals in my mind, were now allies and confidants, planning our futures side by side. Brian's unwavering support and openness through every step reassured me of the unshakable foundation of our relationship. Our story, marked by moments of doubt and strengthened by communication, is a testament to the unpredictable nature of relationships. It is a reminder that the heart's capacity for love and forgiveness is boundless, and that sometimes, those we perceive as threats can become our staunchest allies. As I look forward to walking down the aisle next year, to say, "I do" to the man who has been my best friend, my confidant, and now my fiancé, I am filled with gratitude. Gratitude for the love that surrounds us, for the friends who support us, and for the unexpected twists in life that often lead to the most beautiful destinations. Liz's role in our engagement story is a beautiful reminder of how interconnected our lives are, and how the power of community and friendship can elevate the most significant moments of our lives. Indeed, communication saves the day again, proving that when hearts are open, and intentions clear, the bonds we form can lead us through any storm to a brighter, shared horizon. My husband has been hesitant about intimacy with me since I recovered from a terrible accident. When I first met James at a friend's dinner party, the last thing on my mind was falling in love. I was in the midst of carving out my own path in the bustling city of New York, and at 22, life felt like an endless adventure. James, 15 years my senior, was already a well-established architect whose gentle demeanor contrasted sharply with the ambitious, often ruthless characters I encountered in my daily routine. His smile was calm and knowing, like he had traversed great distances in the world and within himself to arrive at a place of serene acceptance. By the time dessert was served, we were engrossed in our own little world, talking about everything from Renaissance art to the quirks of urban living. Our relationship blossomed quickly, bound by a magnetic pull that neither of us attempted to resist. Despite our age difference, or perhaps because of it, we complemented each other perfectly. I brought spontaneity and zest into his structured life, while he offered the stability and perspective I didn't know I craved. Our friends often joked about how we were proof that opposites don't just attract, they converge. 3 years into dating, on a chilly autumn evening that painted Central Park in hues of gold and auburn, James proposed. It was nothing extravagant, simply us, a bench overlooking the lake, and a velvet box that contained more than just a ring. It was a promise. A promise of a future together, of dreams shared and challenges faced hand in hand. We married in a small, intimate ceremony the following spring, surrounded by those who had championed our union from the start. As the years unfolded, our conversations often veered towards the future, particularly around health and aging. Given our age gap, it was a practical, if not slightly uncomfortable topic. James would jest about becoming an old man before my time, urging me to learn the signs of various age-related ailments. I remember laughing it off, reassuring him that we'd face whatever came our way together, secretly cherishing the thought that I could care for him as lovingly as he had promised to care for me. James was more than just my husband, he was my confidant, my rock, and my greatest advocate. When I decided to start my own graphic design business, he transformed the spare room into an office and spent countless nights helping me refine pitches and soothe my anxieties about entrepreneurship. His belief in me was unwavering, and it propelled me through the tumultuous first years until my venture found its footing. The day of the accident, the world seemed wrapped in a chilling embrace, the sky a dull gray canvas that stretched endlessly above the city. It was mid-December, and the first real snow had transformed the landscape into a slippery tableau of whites and grays. I had left the office early, eager to return home after securing a significant new client, a triumph in my budding career in graphic design. My spirits were high, bolstered by the thrill of accomplishment and the promise of celebrating with James later that evening. The roads, slick with ice and congested with the early rush of commuters eager to escape the cold, presented a challenge I felt prepared to tackle. James, ever cautious, had insisted on staying on the line with me as I drove, his voice a comforting presence that guided me through the treacherous streets. Our conversation, light and filled with plans for the upcoming holidays, was a pleasant distraction from the anxiety of navigating the icy roads. As I approached the curve just a few miles from our home, the tranquility of the moment shattered. A car, moving too fast for conditions, appeared seemingly out of nowhere. It skidded, a flash of red that spun wildly across the black ice, a stark contrast to the white snow. Time seemed to slow as I watched the vehicle careen towards me, my own car feeling suddenly unmoored, as if caught in the gravitational pull of the impending collision. The impact was both a violent jolt and a surreal detachment. My car, as if in defiance of the laws of physics, veered off the road, the world tilting madly as it collided with a gnarled tree. The sound of crushing metal and shattering glass filled my ears, a cacophony that seemed both distant and overwhelmingly intimate. The force of the crash pinned me, a harsh embrace that left me breathless, pain radiating through my body like wildfire. Through the haze of shock and pain, I could still hear James's voice, distorted now, a thread of panic weaving through the static of the Bluetooth connection. His words, though I could not make them out, carried a weight of dread that mirrored my own terror. The connection, once a lifeline, had become a witness to the catastrophe, the line crackling with his fear and my helplessness. In the aftermath of the crash, as the silence settled over the broken rhythm of my car's hazard lights, I drifted in and out of consciousness. The world around me felt distant, the cold seeping into my bones, a stark reminder of my vulnerability. I was vaguely aware of voices, the sound of footsteps crunching on snow and ice, the distant wail of sirens growing louder. The reality of my situation began to coalesce into a sharp focus: trapped, injured, alone. Rescuers arrived, their movements brisk and efficient, a blur of activity against the backdrop of the accident scene. I was extricated from the wreckage with care, the pain a constant companion that flared with every motion. The journey to the hospital was a blur, each bump in the road a jolt of agony that coursed through my body. At the hospital, the flurry of activity continued. Doctors and nurses moved in a choreographed chaos, their faces masks of professional concern. As they assessed my injuries, issuing orders and prepping for surgeries, I clung to the fragments of their conversation, trying to piece together the extent of the damage. Words like multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and immediate surgery filtered through the air, painting a grim picture of the road ahead. James arrived some time later, his presence in the emergency room a stark contrast to the controlled panic that had greeted me. Though I could not see his face, I could feel his presence, a steadfastness in the storm. His arrival marked a shift, the hospital staff affording him updates and explanations, his responses measured and calm despite the chaos. The hours turned into days, and the hospital room became my world. Surgeries came and went, each one a calculated effort to mend what had been broken. The pain was a constant, a tide that ebbed and flowed with the passing of time and the administration of medications. My body, once a vessel of independence and strength, had become a landscape of injury and recovery, each scar a testament to the ordeal. Through it all, James was my constant, his dedication a balm to the physical and emotional wounds that had been inflicted. He worked from my side, his laptop a barrier against the helplessness that often threatened to overwhelm him. His care was meticulous, his attention to my needs a silent vow that he was there, unwavering, in the face of adversity. The recovery was slow, a painstaking process that tested the limits of my endurance and resilience. Physical therapy was a daily ritual, the movements at first painful and halting, gradually becoming smoother, more assured. James attended every session, his eyes often holding mine in a silent encouragement that spoke volumes. As I regained strength, the dynamics of our relationship subtly shifted. The care I had once imagined providing for James in our later years was now a reality, but reversed. He was my caretaker, his actions a testament to the vows we had made. In those moments, the depth of our bond was both a comfort and a revelation. The challenges we faced together forging a new understanding between us. Reflecting on the accident and the days that followed, I am struck by the fragility of life, and the strength of love. The road to recovery is long and fraught with challenges, but with James by my side, I am reminded of the power of commitment, and the enduring nature of the promises we make to those we hold dear. As I continue to heal, both physically and emotionally, I am grateful for the presence of a partner who stands steadfast, a beacon of hope in the uncertain journey ahead. The reality of my injuries unfolded gradually, as if each disclosure by the doctors peeled back layers of an unwelcome truth that I was not prepared to confront. I lay in the hospital bed, a network of tubes and wires tethered to machines that chirped and beeped with ominous regularity. My body was a patchwork of trauma. A shattered leg, fractured ribs, a punctured lung, and numerous cuts that laced my skin with the stark lines of sutures. The mirror no longer reflected the woman who had left the house that morning, vibrant and victorious. Instead, it held the gaze of someone entirely new, someone marked by survival. James was there through it all. His presence was both a comfort and a reminder of the stark turn our lives had taken. From the moment he had rushed into the emergency room, his face etched with lines of worry and sleeplessness, it was clear that our roles had shifted dramatically. Where once he leaned on my youthful energy and resilience, he now shouldered the weight of our shared future with a steadfast determination that left me both grateful and heartbroken. In those first pain-laden days in the hospital, James's dedication became the center around which the staff and I orbited. He rearranged his life with meticulous care, ensuring that not a single one of my needs went unmet. His job as a senior architect had always demanded much of him, but he managed to negotiate working remotely, setting up a temporary office in the corner of my hospital room. There, amidst the clinical sterility, he worked, his eyes often lifting from the screen to settle on me with a mixture of concern and love. Each morning as the sun crept through the slats of the hospital blinds, casting long shadows across the antiseptic white walls, James was there, often before I awoke. He became a constant figure at the side of my bed, his hand finding mine in the quiet moments before the day began. He took to discussing my care with the doctors with an intensity that both surprised and reassured me. He knew every medication I was on, each therapy session scheduled, and every prognosis given. His questions were pointed and informed, a testament to the hours he spent researching late into the night, familiarizing himself with every aspect of my recovery. Physical therapy began as a battle between my body's reluctance and my mind's eagerness to heal. The sessions were grueling, a daily test of endurance as I relearned the basics of movement. Pain became a constant companion, its intensity ebbing and flowing but never fully receding. James was there for every session, his face a mask of encouragement. He learned the exercises, gently helping me through the motions when we were alone, his hands steady and sure. At home, James transformed our living space to accommodate my new limitations. He installed grab bars in the bathroom, arranged our bedroom so I could navigate it with my wheelchair, and even managed to make our home aesthetically pleasing despite the clinical additions. He cooked meals rich in nutrients to aid my recovery, his culinary skills growing with each dish he prepared. His life, once filled with client meetings and architectural drafts, now revolved around my rehabilitation schedule. As weeks turned into months, the improvements in my condition were incremental but significant. The wheelchair was replaced by crutches, and then at last by a cane. Each transition was a victory, celebrated quietly between us with a smile, a squeeze of hands, an evening spent watching our favorite movies as we once had. The emotional recovery was harder to gauge. The trauma of the accident lingered in unexpected ways. Nightmares haunted my sleep, and the sound of a car horn could send my heart racing. James, ever observant, took note of these moments, his concern growing with each small sign of my distress. On his insistence, we began counseling, a space where I could voice the fears that I kept buried. James attended every session, not just as my support, but as an active participant, keen on understanding the shadows that had crept into our lives. Our relationship, already deep, grew in depth and complexity. James's unwavering support became the foundation on which I built my recovery. His love, a constant in the flux of pain and healing, reminded me daily of the vows we had taken, to love each other in sickness and in health. As I healed, both physically and emotionally, I realized that these were not just words, but the very essence of our life together. Returning home was supposed to signify a milestone, a tangible step toward normalcy after weeks in the sterile confinement of the hospital. Yet, as James pushed my wheelchair across the threshold of our house, the familiar seemed strangely alien. The walls that had once resonated with the warmth of our laughter now echoed with an unspoken reminder of how much had changed. James, with his characteristic thoroughness, had transformed our living space to accommodate my new limitations. Ramps replaced steps, furniture was rearranged to allow for the smooth passage of my wheelchair, and our bathroom was refitted with rails and a seat in the shower. These modifications, while practical and necessary, served as stark daily reminders of my dependency. In those early days back home, the rhythm of our life was dictated by my therapy schedule. Mornings began with James assisting me out of bed, his hands careful and his eyes constantly scanning for potential obstacles that could cause me harm. Breakfast was a quiet affair, often punctuated by the soft clicks of his laptop as he juggled his work commitments with his new role as my full-time caregiver. Physical therapy sessions were rigorous. The therapist, a kindly woman with a no-nonsense attitude, pushed me hard, her mantra being, progress, not perfection. James attended every session, watching from the sidelines, his face a mask of concentrated concern. At home he would replicate the exercises, his engineering mind devising ways to integrate them into our daily routine. While I appreciated his dedication, his constant vigilance began to feel suffocating. There were moments when I longed for just a sliver of independence, a chance to struggle and perhaps even fail, on my own terms. As the weeks turned into months, my body slowly reclaimed some of its former strength. The wheelchair was replaced by crutches, and eventually, I began taking tentative steps unaided. Each small victory was celebrated by James with a joy that seemed tinged with relief. Yet, as I grew stronger, his worries seemed to deepen. He installed a monitoring app on my phone. Just in case, he said, but each ping on his device was a reminder of the leash I felt tightening around me. The full weight of my changed reality hit me one quiet evening. I was alone in our bedroom, James having stepped out to pick up some groceries. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, the scars on my body stark against the soft glow of the lamp. Tears sprang to my eyes, not out of self-pity, but for the woman I had once been, fearless and free. It was then I decided that I needed to reclaim a part of myself, not just for my sake, but for ours. The next day, I ventured out alone for the first time since the accident. The local boutique was small and intimate, a place where I had once loved to shop. The scent of lavender and soft music in the background felt like a balm to my frazzled senses. I browsed through the racks, my fingers trailing over the luxurious fabrics, until my eyes settled on a set of black lingerie, delicate lace that promised a whisper of normalcy. Buying it felt like a step towards reclaiming my identity as a woman, not just a survivor. That evening I waited for James to finish his work, anticipation mingling with a burgeoning sense of empowerment. When I heard the soft thud of his laptop closing, I slipped into the bathroom, my heart pounding with a cocktail of nerves and excitement. The silk felt cool against my skin, the lace a gentle caress. I practiced my approach in the mirror, trying to rediscover the seductive confidence I had once taken for granted. I walked into our bedroom, the lingerie hidden beneath a robe. James's eyes lit up as he saw me, a smile playing on his lips. But as I let the robe fall to the floor, revealing my chosen attire, I saw a flicker of something else in his gaze. Was it fear? Concern? His smile faltered, and I felt a pang of doubt. I approached him slowly, the air between us charged with a tension that felt both familiar and foreign. As I reached him, I initiated contact, my movements deliberate, seeking to ignite the dormant passion between us. James responded, His touch tentative, but I could feel the hesitation in his fingers, a tremor that spoke of unseen barriers. The moment unraveled swiftly. His hands stilled, and gently, but firmly, he distanced himself. His voice when he spoke, was a mix of apology and rationalization, speaking of recovery and caution. The words meant to reassure instead felt like a rejection. I stood there, the cool air of the room wrapping around me like a shroud, the lingerie that had promised so much now a stark emblem of what we had lost. The emotional toll was immediate and profound. Tears, unbidden and bitter, spilled over as I grappled with the myriad of emotions roiling inside me. Confusion, hurt, and a deep gnawing fear that perhaps the accident had stolen more from us than I had realized. James tried to console me, his words a soft murmur against the storm of my despair, but in that moment, I felt more alone than ever. The weight of silence that hung in the air was thick, almost palpable, as I sat on the edge of our bed, clutching the edges of the comforter in a futile attempt to anchor myself in the maelstrom of emotions that whirled within me. The chill of rejection still clung to my skin, a stark contrast to the heat of the tears that streaked my face. James stood by the doorway. His posture rigid, the usual ease of his demeanor replaced by a palpable tension. As I tried to compose myself, words, previously unspoken, surged forth. "We need help," I whispered, the words slicing through the dense air between us. "I can't do this alone anymore." James's eyes, usually so full of warmth, flickered with something akin to fear. He moved towards me, his movements hesitant, as if he were navigating a minefield. "Therapy," I said, louder this time, my voice steadying with resolve. "We need to see someone. Together." The suggestion hung between us, a lifeline thrown across the widening gap of our disconnect. James sat down beside me, the mattress dipping under his weight. The distance felt immense, filled with words of comfort that had once flowed so easily between us. He looked at me, really looked, his eyes traversing the landscape of my face as if trying to memorize the contours of my resolve. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay," he breathed, a single word that felt like the first step back towards each other. The days that followed were filled with a cautious optimism. We found a therapist who specialized in trauma and relationships. Dr. Ellis was a gentle presence, her office a calm sanctuary that promised solace and understanding. As we sat on her soft, welcoming couch, James beside me, our hands intertwined with an urgency that betrayed our need for reassurance, Dr. Ellis invited us to share our story. In the safety of her office, under the soft glow of her lamp, James began to unravel the threads of his fear. Words tumbled from him in a hesitant stream, his voice breaking as he confessed the terror that had gripped him on the day of the accident. He spoke of the helplessness, the horrific minutes filled with the sound of my voice cut abruptly by silence, the sight of my broken body being retrieved from the wreckage. "I thought I lost you," he admitted, his voice a whisper of raw vulnerability. "And now, every time I think we might be close, physically, I'm terrified it could hurt you, or worse, lose you all over again." Dr. Ellis listened, her nods gentle, encouraging. She spoke of trauma, not just as physical scars but as emotional wounds that embed themselves deep within, coloring our perceptions and reactions. "James," she said softly, "your need to protect Kate is understandable. But it's also important to recognize when protection becomes confinement." Over several sessions we delved deeper into our fears. Dr. Ellis guided us through exercises designed to rebuild trust and intimacy, not just physically but emotionally. We learned to communicate our fears without accusations, to support without suffocating. Slowly, the fortress of vigilance James had built around me began to lower its walls, allowing me to step out, not just as a survivor of an accident, but as his partner, equal and empowered. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when old fears resurfaced with a vengeance, casting shadows over our progress. But each time we returned to Dr. Ellis's office, a haven where we could unpack those fears and lay them out in the light of understanding. Months passed, and with them, the sharp edges of our trauma began to soften. The therapy sessions became less about managing crisis and more about nurturing growth. James's overprotectiveness shifted from a smothering blanket to a more supportive, empowering presence. He learned to share his anxieties without imposing them, and I learned to reassure him without sacrificing my independence. Our breakthrough came on an ordinary evening that turned extraordinary by the sheer power of its simplicity. We were in the kitchen, the smell of basil and tomatoes rich in the air as we cooked together. It was a dance we had performed countless times, but that night, there was a new rhythm, a new ease to our movements. James reached for the olive oil and his hand brushed mine. Something in the touch, brief and accidental, sparked a connection we had not felt in months. Instead of pulling away, he let his fingers linger, his gaze meeting mine. It was a question and an offering all at once. I took his hand, leading him to the living room where the last of the evening's light painted the walls in soft amber hues. We sat on the couch, our sides touching, a silent acknowledgement of the distance we had traveled from that cold, harsh night of my attempted seduction. "Dance with me," I whispered, not out of a desire to test our boundaries, but as a celebration of them. James smiled, a genuine heartwarming smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He stood, pulling me up with him. As we moved to the music of a song that played from the small speaker on our bookshelf, there was a hesitancy in his touch, a careful measuring of his strength. But as the song continued, his embrace grew confident, and I leaned into it, into the love and safety it promised. In that simple act of dancing, in the privacy of our living room with no eyes upon us but our own, we found a piece of ourselves that had been lost in the chaos of my accident and recovery. It was not a return to how things were, but an evolution into something deeper, something forged by the fires of our trials and solidified by the patience of our love. The song ended, but we remained there, held in an embrace that spoke of battles fought and won, of fears acknowledged and conquered. James kissed the top of my head, a gesture so familiar and yet so profoundly different in its newfound depth. "We're going to make it, aren't we?" I murmured, not needing an answer, but receiving one anyway in the firm squeeze of his arms around me. "Yes," he said, his voice steady with the weight of our journey. "We are." And at that moment, I believed it. Not just because of the words but because of the journey behind them, a journey of two people, loving, healing, and ultimately thriving together.
My stepmother abused my fiancé's young brother, causing a family rift that threatens to destroy our wedding and relationships forever. Original post. Mention of child Abu *E. It's not too graphic, but it's there. I tried posting this on AITA through a different account a couple days ago, but it didn't work out. Given the trigger warning, I'm not surprised. I have since concluded my wife and I did the right thing, so this will be my last attempt to post this story. I tried to add some info and change the wording a little. All names are fake. My 28M stepmother, 49F, is a wannabe party planner. She has taken it upon herself to plan and host every party and holiday my dad's family has thrown since she married him. I never loved those occasions growing up. She's controlling and gets upset if people complain about anything, but humored her for my dad's sake. According to him, this helps her feel included. I'm getting married to my fiancée Jane, 26F, in July. We got engaged in early 2021, but Jane ended up getting pregnant a couple months after that, and we decided to postpone the wedding to focus on our son for a while. So we've had a long engagement. My stepmother has tried to hijack our wedding plans from day one, complaining, contacting our planner, showing up unannounced to Jane's dress appointments, etc. And we have repeatedly asked her to stop. Dad wants us to humor her, but she's clearly resentful of the fact that she's not hosting the wedding or being labeled mother of the groom in invitations. Besides our baby boy, we also have Luke, 4M, Jane's paternal half-brother. She got custody of him a few months into our relationship, after his parents died. I ended up moving in with them during the pandemic, and have been in Luke's life since he was a baby. He doesn't call me dad, and refers to us as his sister and his OP, but we love him like a son. Stepmother though hates Luke. She accuses Jane of baby trapping her way into the family. That accusation only got worse after our son was born. My dad gets along with Jane and adores the kids, but stepmother demands him to refuse babysitting Luke, so we don't leave the kids with them often. Instead, Jane's brother and CL usually watch the kids for us, as their children are close to ours in age. We had a thing last Sunday, and my Bill was out of town with his family. Jane's other siblings live in different cities, as well as my mom and sister. My dad agreed to babysit at our place and we left. We came back to find both kids crying, stepmother screaming, and dad weakly trying to calm everyone down. Apparently, Luke had told stepmother that both he and our son were going to be our ring bearers, and she went ballistic. She screamed that she wasn't going to allow that because he wasn't family. She then made me need to include the trigger warning when he started crying. His lip is still split. She'd never gotten to this point before. We immediately banned her from our house and from our wedding. Dad is fuming and has said he's not going without her. He's also convinced half of his side of the family, by severely downplaying what stepmother did, to boycott the wedding as well. This includes my stepbrother, who fully agrees with his mother no matter how many times I try to tell him the truth. Me and Jane are refusing to budge, but many of my cousins who aren't coming anymore are asking us to reconsider. Pretty much all of Jane's family agrees with us, but one of her aunts has suggested that maybe stepmother is acting out because she doesn't feel welcomed by my family. I've honestly had it with my family enabling her behavior. I love my dad and really want him at my wedding, but I am more than willing to go NC if it means protecting my family. Edit. I think I accidentally deleted the paragraph where I mentioned this, but we did press charges. We took Luke to the pediatrician the next day and gathered every piece of evidence we had. Not only did we have pictures of Luke's face, but by some miraculous strike of luck, we also had nanny cam footage. Some commenters were right to assume that my SM hadn't been invited to our house, but my dad hasn't really gone anywhere without her in years, so we took precautions. We didn't expect her to actually do anything this awful, but we've never trusted her with the kids. The physical attack happened off camera, but there is some footage of her screaming and Luke crying before and after the event. She now has a child abuse charge on her rap sheet. We wouldn't let her get away with this. Edit 2. There is a lot of additional info I want to add. I'll try to respond to at least some of the comments. I did not expect the amount I've gotten so far, but all I'll add for now is that Luke is okay. The visit to the pediatrician happened the day after. He already had a counselor. Jane was pretty traumatized when her dad and stepmom died, and was worried it would rub off on him, and will continue treatment. We've been hugging and pampering him a little more than usual too. He's still upset, but is already doing much better. Update 1. I want to thank everybody who took the time to read and/or comment on my previous post. It's been a tough week, but it's always great to know that people care. I haven't been able to reply to every comment, but I will try to address some in this update. This might get a little long. I'll start off by saying that me and Jane are going NC with my dad and SM. We haven't really spoken to either of them since the incident, and I don't plan on being the one to reach out. Any communication between us is being handled by my younger sister. She's completely on our side, but will remain in low contact for the time being. I've decided to adopt Jane's way of dealing with people she cares about. Forgive what's apologized for, but never forget. Basically, if Dad or SM ever truly understand what they did wrong and sincerely apologize, we're willing to forgive them. Even if begrudgingly so, but we will never ignore, or let them forget, what they did to our family. And for the time being, neither of them will be allowed near Luke, our baby, and any other kids we may have in the future, even if we do forgive them. As for the rest of my family, I read a lot of comments suggesting that I post pictures of Luke's face, as well as the nanny cam footage. I'm not very active on social media, but even if I was, I'm not comfortable exposing my injured preschooler like that, especially given that nothing on the internet ever truly goes away. I also decided not to share the pictures with my family unless truly necessary. I should probably mention that while my family adores my dad, most of them aren't very fond of SM. She had 2 failed marriages prior to meeting my father, the first of which resulted in my stepbrother, and he cheated on his then girlfriend to be with her. My family loved that girlfriend and disliked SM right away. Not only has she been controlling and manipulative since the beginning, she's also tried to force her way into the family matriarch role by any means possible. Taking over planning duties for every family event was her favorite way to do it, because of all the attention and compliments that come with it. The main reason why I hated these parties growing up was because she'd always find a way to make everything about her, including Christmas and mine and my sister's birthdays. The rest of the family felt neutral about it, but they never liked her. With Luke, it was different. Most of my relatives didn't meet him until COVID restrictions got looser, and by then he was 2 years old. He's a bright and genuinely lovable kid, and there weren't really any other small children in the family, so everyone immediately started cooing over him. The way I see it, SM got upset that Jane and Luke were accepted by my family so easily compared to her experience, and that's why she resents them both, but I can't confirm that. She was also mad that, aside from not being the planner, she would have absolutely no involvement in the wedding party. She tried to pressure us into letting her officiate. One of Jane's best friends was offered that role a year ago, making stepbrother my best man. He wasn't interested and I'd already gotten my best friend. Or asking her sister's daughter to be our flower girl. We'd promised Jane's 3-year-old niece. Also her sister's daughter is 15 and doesn't know us. She also tried to convince us to let my dad walk Jane down the aisle, since her father's gone, but her eldest brother, the Bill I mentioned in the first post, had already been enlisted. SM was disappointed that my family wasn't as involved in the wedding as Jane's, and kept making comments about how that would never happen if we put her in charge. All of that being said, there's nothing that can excuse being that awful to a child, especially if it really is the petty jealousy that I suspect. Because I haven't spoken with my father, my sister has been keeping me updated on what he's been up to. As I found out through her, the story my dad and SM told the rest of the family completely erases Luke's injury and the abuse charges. It insinuates that me and Jane banned them because we got annoyed with SM and decided to take it out on my dad as well. Because most people already disliked SM, explaining what actually happened that night wasn't hard, and most of the relatives that I actually wanted at the wedding have apologized and are berating my dad as well. The people that didn't believe us, as well as those saying we overreacted, have been told they are not welcome in our home anymore. Those are mostly people from my dad's generation, so I can't say I'm surprised. But the realization that they are so biased they're willing to protect a woman they hate, after she hurt a child, just to make my dad happy has reassured me that I don't need any of them in my life. Stepbrother is still in denial. He refuses to believe his mother could hurt a child, even with all the evidence we have. I have to admit I understand. I love my mom too, but that doesn't mean I'd excuse his obliviousness. So he's banned too. It sucks, because we were close growing up, but I don't regret it. Besides, Jane has 3 other siblings besides Luke, the older Bill, a twin brother and a younger sister, and I'm closer to them than I ever was to him. Speaking of Jane's family, they're all furious over what happened, and have been extremely supportive of us. Jane's maternal family basically adopted Luke after she got custody of him, and have called frequently to make sure he's okay. We did manage to save some money with everybody we uninvited, and have decided to use it to help Jane's cousin. She lives in a different country, and was previously unable to come to the wedding, so we're paying for her plane ticket. Luke has gotten much better, and is almost completely back to being the sunny child he's always been. The split lip was shallow. It's healing slowly, but didn't require any stitches. We sat him down a few days ago, and explained that my dad and stepmonster wouldn't be around anymore. He really liked my dad, but understands that he and SM are attached at the hip. He's clearly scared of her, but we're doing our best to make him feel safe. Me and Jane have reassured him that he is family, we love him, and no one will ever change that. I'm not too worried about Dad or SM trying to show up at the wedding, but we've alerted the venue and given them pictures just in case they try anything. Better safe than sorry. Some people brought attention to the fact that SM is a hypocrite for saying Luke isn't family. I agree, for obvious reasons. Her main excuse for pretty much everything she does is that she doesn't feel like my family welcomes her. Dad has been guilting me to take part in everything she plans by reminding us of that for as long as I can remember. The way he continues to make excuses for her without realizing this is basically a case of the pot calling the kettle black, except Luke actually is family, is what has made me accept that, while I will always love my dad, it's not healthy or safe for me and my family to be around him anymore. It hurts to know my son won't have his only remaining bio-grandfather in his life, but he has 2 amazing step-grandpas to make up for it. For now, I'm sad, but satisfied with how things have turned out. I don't like to complain about my life. It's a mess, but a beautiful one. I love my fiancé, I love my kids, and I'm lucky enough to love my job. We're happy. I'm not letting anyone ruin that. To whoever was annoyed at my censorship. When posting on AITA didn't work out, Jane suggested I make the writing less explicit. I'm not used to Reddit yet, so I might have overdone it a little bit. I hope this is my last update on this story, but I'll keep you posted. Again, thank you for all your love and support. Best wishes to all of you. Relevant comments from OOP. The only reason why I know that this is the first time she's hit him is because this was the first and last time she was with the kids unsupervised. Me and Jane were around every previous time she saw Luke. She didn't want my dad to babysit him, and we'd only asked him to on a few occasions before. My sister was still living with them at the time, and has assured me that Luke was never out of her sight. I know and trust my sister enough to believe her. First time or not, I will not give her a second chance. She'll never hurt either of my kids again. OOP when told to secure passwords with all vendors. We've actually had passwords with the vendors since day one. Some of the earlier ones we met actually recommended us to do it. SM did contact our planner a while back saying she had our approval to talk to our vendors. She didn't let her, and we got a bit more strict with passwords after that. Commenter, so is SM serving any jail time? If she attacked a child then and you guys pressed charges, I would imagine she would have to be processed and eventually serve some time for her crime. OOP, we hope so. We're setting up a date for the arraignment. Commenter, start a file for SM. Keep any and all texts, voicemails and attempts of her communicating. Do the same with anyone who has taken her side because she could escalate, and you may need that info. Those people are flying monkeys and she's sent them to not only plead her case, but report back to her the things you may have told them so she can continue to play her victim card. You were great to have the nanny cam, but should also make sure to notify his daycare or school that she is not to be given info or access to him. Get cameras that have audio just in case she shows up at your house and password protect all of your wedding vendors and let them know not to give her any info and to notify you if she tries. Your dad may be harmless, but she's not. OOP. That second advice is something we've been pretty occupied with, actually. This past week has been mostly about the kids and collecting evidence, but I'll definitely check out the JN Mill sub. Commenter, did you say that if your father and stepmonster apologize that you will allow them at your wedding? I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. OOP, absolutely not. My father and SM are not welcome at the wedding, no matter the circumstances. They could offer me an island and I'd still refuse to let them come back into our lives right now. I only plan to forgive anything far off in the future, and only if they apologize sincerely. Even then, they will have no access to the kids for years after that. Knowing SM, I highly doubt she'll ever feel sorry for what she did, so we're not counting on it anyway. Update 2. I'll start off by, probably, disappointing a lot of people. We're coming to terms with the fact that it's unlikely SM will get anything more than a slap on the wrist. Me and Jane are discussing our next move with our lawyer, but we're still not sure how we're going to move forward. It's too early to tell anyway, so we're trying not to get ahead of ourselves any more than we already have. However, I'm relieved to announce that we're getting started on the process for a restraining order against SM. We're using the same evidence we gathered the week following the incident, including the nanny cam footage and pictures of Luke, and we'll focus on that for the time being. I still haven't spoken to my father. My sister is still in LC, but is seriously considering cutting ties with him. Because my sister is the only one on my side that still talks to him, my father keeps trying to ask her about me, and whether I've calmed down, yet. According to her, he's annoyed that half of his family refuses to talk to him, but still doesn't seem to accept why. I told my sister that she doesn't need to keep playing messenger pigeon between me and our father. I never asked her to do it, and it's clearly taking a toll on her. But she insists she'll stop when it feels right. By the way, there's absolutely no doubt whether SM attacked Luke. Not only did Luke say at the moment we got home, but that was also confirmed by my father in a failed attempt to defend her behavior. He never tried to hide it from us. That, and the fact that he gave Luke an ice bag, is literally the only positive thing I can say about his actions. And SM was too busy screaming about how much of a whining brat Luke was being to deny it. To those who guessed SM is younger than my dad, you get an invisible cookie. She's also 5 years younger than his previous girlfriend. They got together when I was around 15. Also, my stepbrother is only a month older than me. She turns 50 later this year, had him at 21, married his father a year later. Both our kids are doing mostly okay. Luke's back to running around the house in his Superman costume whenever he doesn't have anything better to do. He did have a few nightmares this past week, and is asked to sleep on our bed twice. We don't mention my father around him, and he's still seeing his counselor. Our 14-month-old son has learned 2 new words, hi and bye, and Luke is trying to teach him to say his name. Jane's sister, who moved away for college, is coming over for a couple days to celebrate her 21st birthday later this month. Luke's excited to see her, and Jane's excited to get drunk with her. Can't say I blame her. We're hoping her presence will cheer us all up. I'm not doing so good, and neither is Jane. She's usually the kind of person who tries to keep her negative emotions to herself, but she cried herself to sleep almost every night the week it happened. It breaks my heart to see her like that, and I can't help but feel like this is my fault. There's a part of me trying to tell myself I had no way of knowing SM would do anything like that, but that doesn't really change anything. I allowed my father near my kids unsupervised, even though I knew she'd probably tag along. This is the guiltiest I've ever felt, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Jane has been improving lately, and is trying to convince me to see a therapist. I've never really done that before, apart from a psychiatrist when I was younger, but now feels like a good time to give it a try. I was surprised by a few messages this week from people telling me to forgive my father and SM, as well as re-invite them to the wedding. That's not happening. In fact, I'm not willing to ever forgive SM. My dad has now degraded to a huge maybe, but I will never understand or forget what she did. Also, though the wedding is the last thing on our minds right now, we're not postponing it. We considered rescheduling, but the date we'd settled on is pretty much the only one that works for our guests. We have passwords with all our vendors, and gave them all clear instructions not to talk to anyone but us. Jane's family is bigger and closer to each other, which is why they're more involved in the wedding than mine, but I do have family participating. My sister is one of the bridesmaids, 2 of my cousins are groomsmen, and my mom is walking down the aisle with the wedding party. Going through all of this with Jane has made me understand even more just how much I love this woman. I couldn't ask for a better partner to start a family with, and I have no idea what I'd do without her. This didn't tear us apart, and I couldn't be more thankful. I probably won't make any more updates until after the wedding, unless something big happens. In the meantime, as always, best wishes to all of you. Update 3. I didn't plan on updating again before the wedding, but something pretty huge happened. The good news is we got the RO. The bad news is me and Jane had to see both SM and my father at the court hearing. This was our first time seeing them since we kicked them out of our house over a month ago, and neither of us were looking forward to it. We left the kids with Jane's brother and Sil, so at least Luke didn't have to see them. The hearing itself went a lot quicker than I expected. I'll give credit where it's due. My father was, at the very least, smart enough to understand there was no way they were winning this. There was a lot of evidence against them. Not only did we have the nanny cam footage and Luke's pictures and medical record, but my sister had also gathered every text and email SM had sent her and the family about what happened. And SM hates speaking on the phone, so there were a lot of those. They didn't even bother to get an attorney for the hearing. The judge granted us a protection order against SM. She's not allowed within 500 feet of us or our property anymore. We're changing all our locks this week, and I'm thinking about changing my phone number as well. I have to admit, the moment we left the courthouse was the safest I'd felt since this whole ordeal started. Jane was close to tearing up with joy when we got to the car. We picked up the kids and went to McDonald's with Bill and his family to celebrate. Hours later, my father called me. The order doesn't extend to him, so he can still do that. Jane and the kids were in bed, so I answered. I didn't expect him to change his mind and apologize all of a sudden, but decided to give him one last chance. He tried to start some awkward small talk, but I told him to get to the point. He asked me if the order was truly necessary. I stated, very clearly, that SM was never coming near Jane or my children again, and that I was glad I had an RO to formalize that. Every excuse he had for SM was pretty easy to shut down, but she only hit him once. Yep, and that's enough for me. The kids need their grandma. She's not their grandma, Mom is. She's my wife. You need to respect her. She attacked Luke, she disrespected my family and my own house. I don't owe her anything, least of all my respect. He then went on a rant about family, how much of a godsend SM was and everything she'd done for me and my sister since she came into our lives. I replied by listing every time I could remember about her lying, overstepping a boundary or acting unhinged around me, my family or my sister. I brought up both my adult life and my youth. Examples included her attempts to hijack most of our milestones, recently, our wedding plans, our son's birth, Jane's baby shower and my sister's college graduation. Her obsession with the idea of a perfect family, and her disgusting attitude towards Luke. I also made sure to mention her habits of going through mine and my sister's stuff when we were younger. It's trivial, compared to everything else, but this behavior went on until my sister moved out of their house, only 3 months ago. We're pretty sure she found out about Jane's wedding dress appointments by reading my sister's planner while she wasn't home, for instance. Some of the memories I mentioned are long and hard to explain, but they did cement the fact that SM means nothing to me. He tried to go with the whole, she doesn't feel included excuse again, but I shut him up. I said he'd had the opportunity to protect his grandchildren, but had chosen his monster of a wife instead, and that's enough for me to want nothing to do with him. I hung up without saying goodbye. My sister told me he called her afterwards, and she told him she was going NC with him as well. I think we're both starting to accept our father won't change. It sucks, but he's made his priorities clear, and his children and grandkids aren't among them. For now, that's it. Now that they're fresh in my mind, I'm thinking about sharing some of the stories I reminded my father of, but that's gonna take a while. Until then, as always, best wishes to all of you. Relevant comments. Commenter, but she only hit him once would have ended the phone call for me. OOP, I almost hung up on him when he said that. The only reason I didn't was because I knew I wasn't gonna talk to him again anytime soon, and I still had a lot to say. Commenter. I am curious how your stepbrother is handling all of this. Like, the RO is something you can't just push away. A judge stated that what his mother did was so terrible she needed to stay away from those children. It just feels like something you can't stick your head in the sand and claim that you could never believe that your mother could hurt someone like that. OOP, I haven't spoken to him since days before the RO, and he hasn't tried to contact me or my sister. He was still in denial last time we talked, but seemed a bit doubtful. TBH, I think he's the only one who isn't a complete lost cause and still has a slight chance of coming around. He's still banned, but I might be willing to talk to him about this whole thing. Commenter. Holy hell. If you are comfortable sharing, I know many of us would want to hear those hijacking stories. Hope the kids don't have too terribly long an impact on their life from this, especially the preschooler. OOP. Luke hasn't mentioned her in a while. I don't doubt he was affected by this, but I think he understands everything is okay now. Our baby is barely a year old. And if it's up to me, He won't even know she exists until he's grown. I'll definitely share some of the stories as soon as I can bring myself to write them down. Commenter. It's crazy how the court gave your dad a chance not to give him the protection order and you gave him a chance to explain on the phone and he still managed to screw up. You guys gave so many chances and your dad fails to see that SM is a bad person. Your dad doesn't seem like he's going to change, and until he does, somehow stop giving him more chances. OP, that was his last chance, and he blew it. If he ever comes around, and that's a big if, it'll still take me a long time to allow him back into our lives. Update 4. After being engaged for over 2 years, me and Jane finally got married last Saturday. We're still getting used to calling each other husband and wife, but we'll get there. Hopefully. The wedding was awesome. The kids had fun, our extended families finally met, and we danced so much I could barely stand the next day. Luke took his ring-bearer duties seriously, and held my son's hand as they walked down the aisle. Besides my aunt getting shit-faced and being let out on a wheelchair, which I already thought would happen anyway, everything went according to plan. It's been 4 months since we got the RO against SM. Things have been mostly quiet, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Except completely quiet, but we can't always get what we want. I never really worried about SM showing up at the wedding, especially after the RO. It's literally illegal for her to come close to us, and we made it very clear that if she tried, we'd call the cops right away. My friend still warned me to take safety measures, most of which I did. SM didn't show up, of course, but I'm a strong believer that any money spent on security is well spent, so no regrets on that end. My stepbrother and I wished each other happy birthdays, and he also texted Jane on hers back in June. That's the only contact we've had during these months. He knows that the door is still open if he wants to apologize. My dad has given up on trying to reach me. We haven't spoken since April. He's still trying to talk to my sister, for some reason, but she's ignoring him. A few days after she went NC with him, they had a huge fight over the phone about SM's treatment of us over the years. Insults were thrown, sore subjects were brought up, and, most importantly, my father took SM's side on almost everything. My sister called me crying afterwards. I wanted to call him and yell at him, but she told me not to. She's doing okay now. She hasn't blocked him, but doesn't take his calls or answer his texts. She's only gotten 3, a weak apology, one on my birthday back in May, and a long rant after neither of us wished him a happy Father's Day. After all, despite our differences, he's still our father. He's not wrong. I love my father, and I always will, but I can't be around him anymore. While I've closed that door, I'm not locking it just yet. He knows what he needs to do if he wants his family back. I don't think he'll do it, but if there's the slightest chance he might, I'll consider opening the door an inch or two. This is my wife's suggestion. I'm a lot less optimistic than she is, but maybe it's important to hold on to that hope. She hasn't forgiven him though. Or SM, Jane has always been very protective of Luke, so it was no surprise that this disaster shook her. A part of me was scared she'd blame me, but she called me a dumbass when I told her that. I've been in therapy for a few months and it's helped a lot more than I thought it would. I've realized SM's behavior around me growing up was a lot worse than I always thought, and it's great to finally be able to get my feelings off my chest. Right now, I'm more than happy. I just married the most amazing woman ever, and I have the family I always dreamed of. None of us are perfect, but I never thought life would be this great to me. I'll stick around. Reddit is a lot more than I expected, but I can sleep peacefully now, so it's safe to say this will be my last update on this. Thank you all for the kindness and advice you gave me these months. I could have never expected the support I got from you guys, and I can't begin to describe how helpful it was. Seriously, thank you all. Edit 3 days later. Okay, I updated too soon. I didn't want to write another post, so I'll just add this here. My stepbrother called me earlier today. Apparently, he and SM had a fight and he wants to meet up. I agreed as long as it was just the two of us. We're meeting up for coffee on Wednesday. I have no idea what to expect, but even if he does apologize, I need to know he understands how and why he let us down. New update. Hey guys. I've been away from Reddit for a few months, due to some stuff at work. But a lot of people have been messaging me about my stepbrother, so I want to give you a small update. I've been busy and tired these days, so I might gloss over some details. Feel free to ask me anything. I first met my stepbrother for coffee back in August. He'd had a fight with SM and the RO was brought up. She'd lied to him about some details, accusing Luke of picking on my baby, badmouthing Jane and more, but this time, he managed to force her to tell him the truth. My stepbrother started to reevaluate his relationship with his mother. After talking to his therapist and his friends about it, as well as the way she'd raised him, he finally accepted I wasn't exaggerating about what she did to Luke. He wanted to talk to me back in June, but didn't want to distract me and Jane from the wedding. Me and my stepbrother spent the last 4 months working on rebuilding our relationship. We've been meeting for coffee or lunch and discussing his mother and what she did to our lives and my kids. Jane started joining us in October, and the kids saw him again for the first time 2 weeks ago. Things were awkward between us for a while, but we're good now. He's also making amends with my sister. In early November, he completely cut contact with SM. Jane and the kids are doing amazing. Luke turned 5 in September, and our baby will be 2, holy crap, in early February. We're spending the holidays with Jane's family in Brazil, while my stepbrother stays with his girlfriend. Things are great, that's all. I'm signing off for now. I'll let you know if anything happens. Happy holidays, everyone. Best wishes to all of you. Am I the asshole for refusing to raise my husband's children from his affair now that he and the woman he cheated with have passed away? Sorry for using a new account. I know that's a red flag, but I don't want to risk using my old Reddit account. My 45F husband, 49M, of 23 years has been having an affair with a 20-years-old girl since 2020. I found out this year when his affair partner gave birth to twin boys in March. Obviously we were going to divorce. We've been hashing things out since. It's been a lengthy process due to some properties in common and we needed to get an accountant since he used the shared account for his affair. Finally things seemed to be getting close to the end when both my husband and the woman he cheated with were killed in a car crash. By some miracle the twin babies were not harmed in the crash. Now they are orphaned and neither set of grandparents can take them in permanently. My husband's parents are both in assisted living. He has no siblings and the only aunt that could take them refuses. She's been child-free her whole life. On the woman's side, I'm not sure the details in full, but her parents are also not able to be involved long-term and the one sister she has lives overseas. Since we were still married and he had not updated his will, all his assets are set to pass to me and our 2 children. I'm not callous enough to leave those babies with nothing, so I agreed to let whoever is their legal guardian to have the remaining balance in the shared account. About $25,000 in savings. The issue is no one wants to take them in. Now my in-laws are pressuring me to take them in and raise them. The issue is, I don't want to. At all. I wouldn't love them and I don't want to be the evil stepmother. But I know a big part of me will always have a level of resentment towards them. I will probably favor my own children. It's not their fault, but I truly loved my husband and I thought we were happy before I found out about the affair. We have 2 daughters, 14 and 16. Obviously we had disagreements, but never insulted each other before. Then I found out about the affair and he began calling me names and blaming me for his cheating. He became abusive and even tried to kick me off the house, my childhood home that is not shared property for the record. I'm also raising teenagers alone now. I don't have the energy to raise babies anymore. My daughters hate their baby brothers. I tried to get them to spend time with their dad as we were divorcing, but they refused. Since this all was found out because of the babies, there wasn't really a way to sugarcoat the situation. And they are also too old to really get away with it. Most of my friends agree it's not my place to care for those children, but my in-laws, the affair woman's parents and my mother want me to raise them. I know my mom is just having grandkids fever, but it hurts to not have her support. I have to make a decision by next week or the boys will be going into foster care. At the moment they are temporarily placed with their maternal grandparents. I feel horrible, but I am very sure I can't take them in. Small update. Hey everyone, this blew up far more than I thought, and I appreciate the well wishes for my girls, the boys and myself. Also for the amount of lovely people offering to see about giving the twins a good home. I might not be their mother, but it does touch me and makes me glad there's good people out there. After thinking carefully and speaking to my lawyer, reading responses, doing research, etc. I plan to speak to the grandparents tomorrow and refuse to take legal guardianship of the boys. I will let them know of the usernames of people that offered meetings for private adoptions or fostering, but my daughters are my priority. It'll be up to the twins' grandparents to decide if they'll proceed with adoption, keep them, or turn them to the state. I wish I had the mental capacity to be the person to do this, but I have 2 girls that are going through a lot and they need my full attention. I'll also be talking to the lawyers to figure out if the boys have any inheritance claim properly. If they do, I'll separate it and leave it to the lawyers to do what they need to do for them to have access when it's best. If they don't, I'll find a way to ensure they have access to the $25,000 I was going to give them since the beginning. I won't do more, however. My moral compass might be biased, but I don't believe I'm obligated neither morally or legally to do more than what the word of law says. I can't help everyone and I shouldn't have to. I have 2 girls that lost their father, 2 girls that need therapy, 2 girls just about to get to college. They've gone through enough without seeing their mother favor the children of their father's mistress. My mom abandoned me, and my cruel stepdad kicked me out. Years later, they're back begging for help, and I told them this. For the past 5 years, I, an 18-year-old man, have lived with my mother and stepdad. My life changed dramatically when at 10, my biological dad died in a vehicle accident. For my mom as much as for me, it was a trying period. For a few years, we battled both financially and emotionally until my mom met Mark when I was 12. They spent a year dating before getting married when I was 13. Mark clearly didn't like me right from the start. He always saw me as a burden and a continual reminder of my mother's previous relationship. That day they were wedded to me. I noticed Mark staring coldly, calculatedly while everyone was celebrating. Though I dismissed it as simply wedding day nerves, it made me shudder. Growing up, I made every effort to fit in with Mark. Along with maintaining my grades and helping him with yard work or watching football, activities he liked, I worked around the house. Still, it never was sufficient whatever I did. He would always find means to denigrate me or make me unwelcome. Mark would criticize me for not being his actual son or for simply squandering room in his house. If it were up to me, you would be out on the street where you belong, he would say, or, you're lucky your mother loves you because no one else would put up with a useless kid like you. Though they hurt, I tried not to let them define me. When she saw these exchanges, my mother would try to referee, but she usually sided with Mark to diffuse conflict. She might remark, he doesn't mean it that way, or you need to try harder to get along with Mark. In my own house, I felt as though I was continually treading on eggshells. As I aged, things grew worse. Mark insisted on my paying rent when I reached 16 and started working part-time at a nearby grocery store. Though she felt it was a little harsh, my mother agreed it would teach me responsibility. So a good amount of my little pay went to Mark every month, leaving me nothing to save or spend on myself. My mother recently landed an incredible job overseas. She could possibly acquire a permanent job from a 6-month contract she was presented with in Europe. I could see the thrill in her eyes when she initially told me about it. I had not seen her genuinely delighted about something in years. But worries about living alone with Mark soon eclipsed my delight for her. I told my mother about how Mark treated me when she was away, therefore expressing my worries. I related stories of events when he would accidentally ruin items I cared about, such as the model airplane my dad and I created together before he passed away, or how he would forget to buy groceries I could eat knowing I had dietary restrictions. My mother dismissed it, saying Mark was merely tough and I was exaggerating. She advised me to give him an opportunity and that living together might strengthen our relationship. That day my mother left was among the toughest of my life. I hugged her tightly while we stood at the airport, stifling tears. Though I wanted her to stay, to not be left with Mark alone, I couldn't bring myself to slow her down. Mark laid his hand on my shoulder as she passed the security checkpoint. Though his hold was agonizing, to anyone observing it would have looked like a consoling action. His voice chilly, he continued, "Let's go home, boy. Things are going to be different now." And they were different as well. Things plummeted from the time we arrived home. Mark started screaming at me for the most minor transgressions. Should I leave a dish in the sink or arrive home 5 minutes later than usual, he would yell. Once on my way to school, I unintentionally left a light on in my room. Mark had taken out every light bulb from my room when I returned. "You don't deserve to have any if you can't remember to turn off the lights," he remarked, grinning. Saying he was merely letting me stay because of my mother, he threatened to kick me out several times. "One incorrect move," he would counsel, "and you'll be out on the street. And who do you suppose your mother will find credible? Me, her devoted husband, or her unappreciative kid brat?" Though I tried to keep my head down and avoid confrontation, it was getting intolerable. My mental health was failing and I couldn't concentrate on my academics. I was depressed and concerned all the time as my grades began to slide. Several times I called my mother to let her know what was occurring, but she always appeared preoccupied and advised me to sort it out with Mark. Her voice sounded stressed about her new employment, and I didn't want to aggravate her problems. About 2 months into my mother's absence, one evening things got out of control. Covering a sick colleague, I had been working late at my job. When I got home late, I contacted Mark to let him know. But when I got there he was waiting for me, enraged. He accused me of lying, of doing drugs or running afoul of the law. He labeled me useless and declared he was bored with having me around when I tried to explain. Driven by a flash of wrath, he seized a box containing old pictures, my dad's watch, and school keepsakes and threatened to toss them. I begged him to stop, And in the struggle the box dropped and its contents spilled over the floor. Mark topped me as I hurried to gather my things. "This ends now," he snarled. "I will throw you out myself. I want you out of my house by tomorrow." That was the final straw. I knew I couldn't stand it anymore. I packed a bag with basics and departed in the middle of the night once Mark turned in for sleep. After a few days of crashing at my best friend's house, I discovered a small room to rent using part-time job savings. I didn't notify my mother right away since I wanted to spare her from stress and compromise her employment possibility. When she returned, I reasoned I would explain everything. Mark began sending me frightening notes that he would phone the police and report me as a runaway should I not return, so I blocked his number. 1 month now, and I'm getting by on my own. It's not easy. I'm trying to keep up with school while working extra hours to pay for basic needs including rent. Though I hardly eat some days, it's still better than living under Mark's roof. Though I feel bad about leaving without telling my mother, I also feel as though I had little option. Stress and continual fear were breaking me. So Reddit, am I the moron for leaving the house of my stepfather while my mother was overseas? Should I have pushed more to make things work? Should I get in touch with my mother right now and clarify everything? I'm lost and would much benefit from any guidance. Edit. I appreciate your replies, everybody. Having perused them, I value your help. Many of you have inquired about my housing circumstances and future intentions. I came into a modest studio apartment through a buddy of a friend right now. Though I can hear every movement my neighbors make and the plumbing is erratic, it's safe and reasonably priced. To pay for things, I'm part-time instructing online and working at a nearby diner. Regarding education, I am in my senior year and set to graduate. My school counselor has been in contact with me on my circumstances and has been quite helpful in ensuring I remain on target. Others of you advised getting in touch with other relatives. Sadly, my grandma died a few years ago and my mom was an only kid. After his death, my dad's side of the family lost contact with us. Hence, for the past few years, Mark, my mother and I basically have been the only ones in touch. When my mother gets back, I'm not sure how to handle things. Though another part of me wants to tell her everything, I am afraid she won't believe me or will start to side with Mark once more. When I visit the bridge, I suppose I'll cross it. Right now my priorities are finishing school and keeping afloat. Again, thank you everyone for your wise counsel and polite comments. Update 1. After my first post 6 months ago, a lot has happened. I wanted to let everyone know about current affairs. Last week, my mother got back from a work trip overseas. Though I was anxious about meeting her, I also looked forward to at last clarifying all that had happened with Mark. Still, events did not go as I had intended. The day she returned, I got her on the line. Her voice was icy and hostile, not at all the gentle, caring tone I was accustomed to. She insisted on knowing whether it was accurate that I had fled with money taken from Mark. Startled and perplexed, my mind flew to try to figure out where this charge originated. I tried to describe what actually happened. How Mark had been verbally nasty. How he had threatened to kick me out, and how I left for my own safety and mental health. I informed her about the episode involving my box of personal items and about how Mark had made every day she was gone awful. Still, my mother would not pay attention. She insisted non-stop that Mark had shown her proof of my theft. She was evasive when I asked what proof, mentioning missing money and dubious bank activity. I assured her I had never taken anything in my life. It was all falsehoods. She appeared to have her opinion already formed, even though I reminded her of how honest I had always been with her and how hard I had worked at my part-time job to help the house. To enable us to have a face-to-face conversation, I pleaded with her to meet personally. She accepted under some coaxing, but Mark was with her when we met at a neighborhood cafe. My heart dropped the minute I saw him. Though he looked sad, I could see the triumphant gleam in his eyes. Mark presented me with a show of worry and disappointment. He concocted a story about how he had tried his best to look after me while my mom was away, but that I had grown rebellious and begun pilfering money to pay for a party life. He discussed how he had spotted strange withdrawals from their joint account and how he would have noticed cash missing from his wallet. I stumbled. Though he told it so convincingly, every word he spoke was a lie. He even claimed to have fictitious bank records and invoices proving I had been taking money. Though I'm not sure how he made them, they appeared real enough to mislead my mother. He discussed his attempts to approach me about it, but I had fled instead of dealing with the fallout. I tried furiously to explain my side of the narrative and defend myself. I described how I'd been struggling to make ends meet in my tiny apartment and how I'd been working extra shifts to help myself. I mentioned to them the evenings I would have gone to bed hungry as I cannot afford rent as well as food. I begged my mother to remember how I had always been conscientious with money. How I had never given her any cause to question me before. But Mark had obviously been working on my mother for several weeks prior to her comeback. Her belief of me as a troubled, unappreciative child who had seized advantage of her absence was shaped by his poisoning of her against me. He presented himself as the victim, a worried stepfather limited to helping his wayward stepson. Seeing the sight of disappointment and wrath in my mother's eyes was the worst of it. She said she had trusted me to behave while she was away and she couldn't believe I would treat her this way. She accused me of trying to assign blame and fabricating falsehoods about my loving stepfather when I tried to explain about Mark's behavior. Her voice breaking, "How could you do this to us?" she asked. "We gave you everything, this is how you reimburse us?" Her comments ripped right through, each one like a physical blow. Her own son Mark seemed to me incomprehensible as she believed him over me. My mother informed me at the meeting that she wanted time to consider what to do going forward. If she didn't trust me, she stated she cannot have me back in the house. I watched Mark comfort my mother by putting his arm around her shoulders as they exited the eatery. I got queasy looking at it. I kept trying to get in touch with my mother throughout the next few days, hoping she would listen to me free from Mark's influence. She either answered with brief icy texts instructing me to quit lying and take accountability for my behavior or ignored my calls. I was quite hungry. Hoping they may be able to talk some sense into her, I contacted a few of Mom's friends. Alas, it appeared Mark had also gotten to them. They all told me how let down they felt of me. How they couldn't believe I would have stolen from my own household. My mother finally sent me a lengthy text message stating she had decided it would be better if I stayed away from home. She claimed she needed time to get through everything and that she felt rather let down in me. She advised me not to get in touch for a little while. I felt crushed. Along with losing my house, I had lost my mother, the one I considered to be always on my side. Mark had turned her against her own son by totally controlling her. The next several weeks blurted together. Trying to forget the huge void in my life where my family used to be, I pushed myself into work and education. Often lying awake at night, I struggled to fall asleep and found myself wondering what I could have said better to make my mother believe me. I replayed the talks in my mind. My grades began to slide once more, and I ran the danger of not graduating. It took a worried teacher dragging me aside to get me out of my slide back. She questioned what was wrong when she observed my alterations. Hesitantly at first, I told her all. She thought of me surprisingly. She assisted me in contacting a social professional and a school counselor capable of offering me tools and assistance. Their assistance allowed me to get back on track with my academics and even obtain some extra financial aid to cover living expenses. I'm now figuring out my next moves. Working as hard as I can to support myself, I am still in my little flat. I have contacted a few reliable teachers at the institution who have been encouraging and guiding me through independent finishing of high school. About the future, I'm terrified, angry and wounded. My mother's treachery aches especially, and there are days when the loneliness feels unbearable. But I also want to prove Mark mistaken and show my mother the truth at last. Though I have not given up hope totally, I am not sure if our connection will ever be the same. Right now, I'm mostly planning for college and finishing off high school. Though it won't be simple, I am resolved to lead a better life for myself whether or not my family supports it. I appreciate your support of my original post everywhere. I would really appreciate any guidance on how one might go from here. How might I recover from this betrayal? When I feel so alone, how can I design a life for myself? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 2, 5 years later. My last update 5 years ago and my life has altered drastically. I wanted to let others know what had happened and obtain some viewpoint on a most recent development. After high school, I threw myself into my education and job. Though I still felt the loss of my family hard, I turned that suffering into will. Majoring in computer science, I secured a scholarship at a state institution. I balanced several part-time jobs to make ends meet. Freelancing web design, working at the university library, and even weekend pizza delivery. Though it was demanding, college also released me. Living with Mark, I felt free from the continual anxiety and terror that had dogged me for the first time in years. To help me through the pain of my past, I began visiting a therapist and befriended people who grew to be like family. After graduating with honors, I found work directly out of college at a bright tech startup. Though I worked long hours and under great pressure, the work was challenging and I loved that challenge. Being appreciated for my work ethic and abilities felt fantastic, something I hadn't lately experienced. I have ascended in the company during the last 3 years. Originally a junior developer, the higher-ups were drawn to my commitment and creative ideas. Within a year, I was elevated to team lead. Lately, I was assigned lead developer for our primary offering. Our startup recently attracted a sizable investment, which sent us into the major tech industry ranks. Along with stock options that might be quite valuable should the business keep expanding, this brought a sizable pay rise for me. For the first time in my life, I am comfortable as well as financially steady. Along with moving into a decent apartment and even beginning to save money for the future, I bought my first car. I never spoke with Mark or my mother during this period. Particularly during holidays and events like my college graduation and career promotions, it was difficult. There were evenings when I would lie awake wondering whether my mother ever considered me, whether she ever regretted choosing Mark above me. But I concentrated on starting a new life for me and assembling a selected family including mentors and close friends. Out of the blue last week, I got a call from an unidentified number. My response caused a hush, then I heard a voice I hadn't heard 5 years ago. Mom was it. Her voice sounded worn out and desperate, nothing like the confident, loving mother I knew from my early years. She informed me Mark and she were having money problems. Mark apparently had some poor investments, and their property was about to go under foreclosure. Mark has been unemployed for the past year since his company he worked for filed for bankruptcy. They were drowning in debt after devouring their savings. My mother said she was sorry for all that had transpired years ago. Her voice broke as she said she had come to see Mark had controlled her over time. She admitted she had been carrying guilt for years and she regretted not trusting me. She asked whether we might get together to try to heal our relationship and to go over things. I froze. I had dreamed of this for years, my mother recognizing the truth and reaching out to re-establish contact. Now that it was occurring though, I experienced a rush of emotions, optimism, resentment, grief, and residual betrayal. After a protracted silence, I decided to see her at a cafe, the same one where we had our confrontation 5 years earlier. It startled me to find Mark and my mother there when I got there. With her grayed hair and worried lined face, my mother seemed older and exhausted. Mark's shoulders dropped and his eyes downcast suggested he had lost the cocky air he formerly possessed. More specifically, they said they were months behind on their mortgage payments and that the bank threatened to seize their residence. When his company closed, Mark lost his career. Even now, he has struggled to find consistent employment. Teacher pay for my mother was insufficient to pay living expenses and debt. I observed as they spoke the dynamic between them had altered. Often breaking off or correcting Mark, my mother looked more forceful. Mark, on the other hand, seemed subdued, a far cry from the dominant man I recalled. The true reason they reached out was to ask whether I might provide them loans to enable them to get back on their feet. Having heard through mutual friends about my achievements in the tech sector, they thought I would be in a position to be of use. Sitting there, I listened to their appeal and experienced a range of feelings. Part of me felt vindicated. Years ago Mark had lied and exploited the circumstances, and at last they were owning this. Another side of me, though, was resentment at their only outreach when they required something from me. Mom grabbed my hand in hers across the table. Tears in her eyes. "I know we don't deserve your help," she added. "We are desperate even though what we did to you was awful. We have nowhere else to turn." Mark joined in, his voice missing the assurance it had previously possessed. "I know you have every cause to hate me," he continued. "I treated you cruelly. I let everything be poisoned by my insecurity and jealousy. Though I am really sorry for what I did, I am not asking for pardon." Their apologies set off past hurts and memories. I considered the lonely evenings in my small apartment, battling poverty. I recalled the sense of betrayal when my own mother decided to accept a falsehood instead of her son's reality. I told them I needed time to consider it once they had finished speaking and inhaled deeply. I promised nothing when I left the cafe. Their begging gaze trailed after me. I'm divided now. One hand, I have worked hard for my accomplishment and I do not believe I owe them anything based on their treatment of me. Mark's falsehoods ruined my bond with my mother and drove me to fend for myself when young. Part of me wants to turn away and let them deal with the results of their behavior. Still, even with everything, I worry about my mother. Though I worry that if I assist her, I would be exposing myself to more manipulation or demands of continuous support. The idea of her being homeless or struggling hurts my heart. The way this could affect my own financial stability worries me as well. I'm not sure whether I could afford to save them without sacrificing my own future, even if right now I'm doing great. The startup scene is erratic, hence my present success is not sure to last. One more issue is forgiveness. Can I really get beyond what transpired? After such a great betrayal, is it possible to repair a relationship with my mother? And then regarding Mark. Can I ever trust him or have him back in my life even as he apologies? Unable to decide, I have been debating these questions for the past week. I discussed it with my closest friends and even mentioned it in a session with my therapist. Though everyone has different ideas, finally they all say the same: it is my decision to make. Part of me is driven to be a great person and offer an olive branch of support. Perhaps this is the first step toward mending past hurts and reconstructing my relationship with my mother. Another side of me, meanwhile, is terrified of subjecting myself to the suffering I have so battled once more. So on Reddit, I find myself wondering once more: am I bad if I refuse to assist my mother and stepdad financially following all that has happened? Should I provide them another chance or guard the life I have created or myself? I could really appreciate some outside view because I find myself at a crossroads. My girlfriend of 10 years left me after getting pregnant with my younger brother. Now, 6 years later, a terrible event has unfolded. For the past 6 years, I, 32M, have been living apart from my family following a terrible tragedy that split our family. I will try to precisely convey the complete scenario. 6 years ago, I was with Rebecca, my high school sweetheart, also 32. Since we were 16, we had been together. At 26, we were getting married. Everything appeared ideal, and beginning our life together excited me. Rebecca first crossed my path in our high school biology class when we were both 16. As lab colleagues, her brilliance and sense of humor immediately appealed to me. I saved weeks' worth of money for our first date to drive her to a decent local restaurant. I knocked over my water glass in great anxiety, but Rebecca laughed and helped me to clean it. I knew then she was unique. I sought to make every moment with Rebecca unforgettable during high school. I shocked her with a scavenger hunt across town for her 17th birthday, placing hints at all our favorite sites. Her last hint brought her to our neighborhood park, where I had laid together a picnic with her favorite dishes. I will never forget how brilliantly her eyes lighted when she saw it. I was resolved to make our long-distance relationship work when we started different colleges. Whether or not I had homework, every weekend I would drive 3 hours to see her. During test weeks, I would deliver her care packages loaded with her preferred treats, stress-relieving tools, and handwritten letters of encouragement. I worked additional shifts at my job after graduation, when we both returned to our hometown, to save for a dream trip for us. Rebecca had always wanted to travel 2 weeks to Europe, so I surprised her with that. We saw London, Paris, and Rome. I booked a private boat trip on the Seine River during the Paris sunset. With the Eiffel Tower gleaming behind her, I can still see her looking so gorgeous. I totally backed Rebecca when she said she wanted to return to school for her master's degree. I started a second job to cover living expenses and her education. Though I had to get up early for work the next day, I would remain late with her, testing her for exams and correcting her papers. I meant to recreate our first date for our 10th anniversary. I set aside the same table at the same restaurant, dressed similarly, and even planned with the waiter to unintentionally drop my water. Saying it was perfect, Rebecca laughed so hard. I proposed under the stars and took her to the beach following dinner so we could kiss first. Looking back now, considering all these memories hurts. Driven by my heart and soul, I really felt we were creating a life together. Knowing how much I loved her and how quickly she seemed to toss all aside makes the treachery burn much more. Rebecca came to me with startling news a few days before our wedding. She reported she was pregnant, but the baby wasn't mine. She had long been cheating on me with William, my younger brother. She was sure the baby was his. She had done the arithmetic. Though I was devastated and angry, what hurt even more was Rebecca telling me she had emotions for William and wanted to wed him instead of me. My entire life seemed to be collapsing all around me. Angry and hurt, I went to tell my parents everything. Though I anticipated them to be as startled and disturbed as I was, to my surprise they appeared strangely cool about the whole matter. William was always considered by my parents as their golden kid, hence I never expected this degree of treachery. I should be glad for my brother, they advised. Even more thrilled about being a grandma, my mother totally ignored how I would feel about the circumstances. What I was hearing stunned me. It felt as though in a moment my whole family had turned against me. The individuals meant to be supporting and loving me were advising me to simply accept this great betrayal and pretend as though everything was normal. Unable to handle the treachery from not just Rebecca and William but also my parents, I had to make the tough choice to leave. I packed, relocated to another city and cut off all communication with each of them. 6 years ago is when that was. My father phoned me a few times throughout all that year, but those exchanges were always tense and awkward. William, my mother and Rebecca never contacted me at all. Not even knowing the name of William's child, my own nephew, as best I could, I tried to move forward with my life. Though I struggled to trust after what occurred with Rebecca, I concentrated on my profession, established new acquaintances and even began dating once more. Still, I was gradually reconstructing my life away from the suffering and betrayal of my past. Then a few days ago, out of the blue, my mother called me urgently. Her name on my phone screen astonished me given all this time. She seemed angry when I responded and said William had suffered a horrible accident. Now he was paralyzed and helpless of working or looking after his family. Hearing this news set me in a range of feelings. Hearing about William's accident surprised and depressed me. Even with all that happened, he remained my brother. But another side of me felt enraged that this was the reason my mother was suddenly getting in touch after 6 years of no contact. Her words next infuriated me even more. She informed me the family needed me. She specifically wanted me to return and act as William's child's father figure, supporting Rebecca in running the family while William healed. I got enraged. How could she possibly believe this was a reasonable request after all that had happened? I told her quite definitely not. She and my father had decided to back Rebecca and William over me, and I reminded her that they had betrayed me in the worst sense imaginable. I claimed I had no obligation to assist them now, particularly after years of no communication. My mother became agitated and charged me with being self-serving. She advised family always comes first and I had to let the past go, saying William's child required a father figure and that Rebecca was having trouble juggling everything on her own. She tried to guilt me. I stayed grounded and turned down once again. 6 years ago, William and Rebecca made their decision. Today they had to live with the results. I said it was not my duty to intervene and pretend to be content families just because their circumstances had become challenging. I advised my mother not to get in touch with me again unless it was to apologize for how they had treated me 6 years ago before we hung up. If they admitted how deeply they had wounded me, I indicated I might be ready to re-establish a relationship with them. But I would never replace William as a father figure for his child. I had a range of feelings once the call finished. Though a bigger part of me felt furious and damaged once more, part of me felt guilty for turning my back on my family when they needed aid. Now wrenched open, the wound that had begun to heal sent all the suffering and treachery roaring back. Since the call, I have been debating this choice constantly. One hand, I feel awful for the child growing up without a completely present father. William's accident is not his child's fault. On the other hand, since they betrayed me and then neglected me for years, I don't think it fair for my family to expect me to fly in and mend everything. Some of my pals believe I'm right in my choice. They claim my family made their bed and now they have to lie in it. Others, however, believe I'm being too severe and should at least give helping some thought for the child's sake. About what to do, I'm split. Some of me wants to keep the life I have created free from the drama and suffering of my past. Another side questions whether I'm being too stubborn and if there is any way I could assist without entirely compromising my own welfare. Reddit, is I right in not helping my brother and his family after he snatched my fiancée and got her pregnant? Edit. Whoa, thanks all for your comments and viewpoints. I want to offer some extra background and touch on a few shared themes. Regarding those curious about my dating life, yes, I have dated Rebecca, but I have not had any committed long-term partnerships. My capacity to trust suffered most from the betrayal. I have been working on it in therapy. Many have wanted to know whether I am certain the child is William's. To be honest, I'm not sure precisely. Rebecca claimed at the time she was certain based on the timing, but I never found any evidence either way. She decided to leave me for William. Hence personally the paternity doesn't alter much. I'm thinking about folks who believe I ought at least see William in the hospital. Though I'm not ready to pardon him, I would like additional information about his situation and outlook. A few remarks noted the possibilities of financial assistance apart from direct engagement. I hadn't given this any thought before, but it could be interesting. For those intrigued about my father's calls over the years, they were essentially surface-level exchanges. The relationship stayed tense since he never admitted the damage done or apologized. A few inquired about other family members. Though they reside in separate states and weren't closely involved in the matter, I have a few relatives I still contact. Though most people feel I owe them nothing, assisting might offer me peace. I will give this viewpoint considerable thought. I value it. I appreciate it all once more. Reading your remarks has helped me to consider the complicated and emotionally charged circumstances that exist here. I'll let you know should any noteworthy changes occur. Update. My last post was a couple weeks ago and a lot has happened. I wanted to let you know how things stand. My parents persisted even if my first response to aid was negative. Almost every day my mother phoned. Even my father started getting in touch more regularly. Telling me how much William and his family needed my support, they kept urging me to change my mind. I first disregarded most of their calls and texts, but after weeks of non-stop correspondence, I became tired. Though I was still enraged over all that had transpired, a tiny bit of me was fascinated about William's situation. At last, following almost 3 weeks of this, I made the decision to pay William a visit in the hospital. I reminded myself that was only to find out how severe his illness truly was, not because I was thinking of volunteering. My tummy knotted when I got to the hospital. After not seeing any of my family members personally for 6 years, I wasn't sure how I would respond. William was laying in the hospital bed as I arrived into his room. He appeared pallid and skinny, linked to several devices. To find my once active younger brother in this situation shocked me. My parents as well. With more gray hair and wrinkles, they seemed older than I had recalled. They hurried over to hug me when they found me, but I pulled back. Not yet was I ready for that degree of closeness. Then I turned to see Rebecca. Tired and concerned, she was standing beside William's bed. Our eyes locked and I started to flood in recollections. I thought back to all the times I had totally trusted her, all the future we had arranged together. I considered how she had been my confidant, best friend, the one I imagined I would spend my life with. Then I thought of how readily she had thrown all of it away. How she had betrayed me in the worst imaginable manner with my own brother. Seeing Rebecca once more after all these years caused all the suffering and resentment I had tried so hard to overcome. I had to fight the want to turn back and leave the hospital straight out. I avoided talking with Rebecca. Rather, I probed my father about William's situation. William had sustained a spinal cord injury in an automobile accident, he said. From the waist down, he was paralyzed and would require long-term rehabilitation. The doctors doubted if he would ever walk once more. My dad remarked something that surprised me as we were chatting. Soon after the child was born, he said, they conducted a paternity test to verify William's indeed fatherhood. I had no knowledge of this test, thus it seemed as a last validation of their treachery. A small child of around 5 or 6 entered the room during our conversation. This has to be my nephew William and Rebecca's son, I realized. The lad seemed perplexed and perhaps afraid of all the medical machinery. Rebecca first brought him to me as his uncle. Mostly just saying hello and asking him about his favorite toys and games, I spent a few minutes with the youngster. Meeting this child who was biologically my nephew but whom I had never known existed felt odd. My mother demanded that I visit their place to further discuss until lately following the hospital visit. I grudgingly agreed, partly to get this whole matter over with. My mother started a sermon at the house on family responsibility and how I should have been stepping forward to assist Rebecca and the child while William was healing. She expressed Rebecca's overwhelm in having to raise a kid, take care of William, and run their house alone. Listening to her, my resentment started to grow. When she stopped at last, I told her precisely how I felt. Like she usually had, she was acting selfishly and solely thinking about William. She had not once asked how I was doing or shown any interest in my life over the past 6 years. I pointed out in all her calls and during this entire chat. She seemed to have come out to me solely because she needed something from me, not because she really cared about mending our friendship. Even after William had deceived her so terribly, I stated it stung that she appeared more worried about his welfare than she ever had about mine. Saying that of course she loved me, my mother tried to defend herself, pointing out that William's position was an emergency. She stated, I had a duty to help, as the healthy brother. I inhaled deeply and told her my ultimate choice. I responded that although I could not give up my own life and peace of mind to assist William's family, I felt pity for his situation and for the difficulties they were confronting. I said I wasn't ready to give up all of the years I had been constructing a new life for myself, working over the trauma and betrayal they had given me. I told her I might be ready to see them once more in the future, but only if they were ready to own how much they had offended me and begin to re-establish trust. I made it plain that this connection would not call for my filling in for William or serving as a father figure for his son. My choices infuriated my parents. They said I was forsaking my family when they most needed me, that I was selfish, but I insisted. 6 years ago they supported William and Rebecca above me, therefore making their choices. Now they had to deal with the results of that choice. I informed them before I went that, while I was open to remaining in touch and maybe working on our connection over time, only if they could respect my limits and show real interest in my life, not simply what I could do for them. That evening's drive home brought a range of feelings. Particularly considering William's sons growing up with a crippled father, part of me felt bad for not assisting more. Still, more of me felt relieved. At last I had spoken up for myself and established reasonable limits with my family. I came to see that although family relations are vital, they do not grant anyone permission to mistreat you or exploit you. Years of mending from their treachery had gone, and I wouldn't be ready to relive those scars just because they suddenly felt they needed me. My parents have phoned a few times in the weeks following that trip. Though the talks have been strained, they seem to be trying to probe my life rather than merely discuss William. Though it's a little step, it offers me hope that perhaps our connection will develop in a better shape with time. Right now, I'm mostly concerned with my own life and welfare. Reconnecting with my family has brought up emotions that I have begun seeing a therapist again to work through. I'm also putting myself into my work and hanging out with buddies who have helped me through all of this. Though I'm not sure what the future holds for my family, I am sure I made the best choice for me. Though only on my terms and at a speed I'm comfortable with, I am open to gently restoring our relationship. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during these trying circumstances. Though I feel like I at last found some closure, it has been a difficult few weeks. I am ready to go forward with my life. Parents secretly charged $115K on my credit card for my sister's Europe trip, so I reported it as fraud, leading to major family fallout. Though I never imagined I would be producing an article like this, here I am still in shock and bewilderment over what my parents have done. Alex, 28, has a younger sister, Emma, 22F, who recently graduated from college. Although our parents have always been, let's say, fascinating in their style of raising their children, this most recent act infuriates me. For background, I have always been the family's responsible one. After working hard in school, I applied for scholarships, and straight out of college earned a decent position in finance. Since I was 22, I have been financially independent. I am glad of what I have done. Emma, on the other hand, has always been the family's young darling. I love my sister, so don't get me wrong. Yet our parents have clearly pampered her. Emma was always obviously the favorite growing up. She was never forced to work a part-time job or help with housework. She acquired the newest appliances and outfits. Focusing on my own objectives and future, I tried not to let it disturb me too much. Nevertheless, occasionally the partiality was difficult to overlook. One specific event came to me when Emma was 10 and I was 16. Months of saving had gone into a new gaming system purchase. Excitedly telling my parents I was heading to the store to buy it, the day I at last had enough money. They answered shockingly, "Oh, we already got one for Emma last week, you are welcome to share hers." Though I was heartbroken, I tried to be happy for my sister and stashed my disappointment. Still, forward swiftly toward the present. Emma recently finished with a degree in communications. She worked hard and deserves to celebrate her accomplishment, hence I am actually proud of her. I also gave her a beautiful graduation present, a new laptop she had been coveting. I heard from my mother last week. She was bursting with enthusiasm, sharing with me Emma's ideal graduation present, a month-long trip throughout Europe. Thinking Emma's gift from our parents was a kind one, I was pleased for her. The shocking revelation then came. "We used your credit card to book it all," my mother remarked dismissively, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. "We needed the points from your card to upgrade some of the flights and hotels, thus we will pay you back, naturally." I had no words. What I was hearing defied belief. When I finally recovered my voice, I inquired about their expenditure. The response made me feel as though I had been pummeled in the gut. $155,000. $155,000 on my credit card without authorization or knowledge. Trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom," I continued, "you cannot just use my credit card without asking me. That's illegal. $155,000 is a lot of money." She discounts my worries. "Oh, Alex, be not too theatrical. It relates to the graduation of your sister. Family looks out for one another. Beyond that, we're good for it. Eventually we will pay you back." Finally. Even then, what did that mean? And because $155,000 is just casual about when. My mother wasn't hearing it when I attempted to explain to her why this was such a big deal. The effect on my credit score, the fact that I might need the credit limit for emergencies, the pure betrayal of trust. "You have always been so selfish," she remarked, her voice going icy. "Could you simply be glad for your sister? This is her big moment. Your penny-pinching habits are trying to destroy it." What I was hearing defied belief. For complaining about an illegal $155,000 transaction on my credit card, I was seen as selfish. I hung up the call feeling a mixture of hurt, wrath, and incredulity. I tried to talk to my dad over the next few days, expecting he would be more reasonable, but he confirmed what my mother had said, that I was exaggerating? And I should encourage my sister more. Emma, for her part, appeared completely blind to the circumstances. She simply gushed about how thrilled she was about the trip and thanked me for helping her to graduate. When I tried to discuss it with her, I thought I was insane. Was I indeed the irrational one present? To contest the charges, I decided to phone the credit card company. However, to my astonishment, I found that my parents had booked everything online using my card details, which they had in case of an emergency. The credit card company said that it wasn't deemed fraud as I had provided them with my details. I now have a $115,000 debt, a maxed-out credit card, and a family who believes I'm being self-serving for not wanting to pay for my sister's expensive trip. The individuals who are meant to love and encourage me have betrayed me, hurt and angered me. What to do eludes me. Though I know that would cause great family strife, part of me wants to call off the entire vacation. Another side of me wants to simply pay it off to save the drama, but $115,000 is a lot of money and the idea of the thing truly disturbs me. Furthermore, allowing this fall could set a standard for more financial mistreatment going forward. Is my reaction too strong? Should I just swallow it and pay for my sister's vacation, or should I stick to it even if it means maybe souring ties with my family? I could really use some guidance. I feel lost. Update 1. I appreciate all of your advice and encouraging words. The sheer reaction to my post really startled me. Reviewing your responses helped me to see that my anger over this scenario was not insane. I felt violated. Considering your counsel, I decided to proceed. I first escalated the problem by phoning my credit card provider once more. I detailed the circumstances, stressing that although my parents had my card information for an emergency, I had never approved this particular use. Following some back-off, they decided to look at the charges as possible fraud. I then asked for a family Zoom call to go over the matter and texted Emma and my parents groupwise. Before acting more forcefully, I wanted to let them have an opportunity to write this. The call was, at least mildly intense. I began gently outlining why their acts were unacceptable, the legal ramifications, the mistrust, and the financial burden it placed on me. I informed them they had to immediately cancel the vacation since I had reported the charges as fraudulent. The response of my parents did not reflect what I had hoped. They were outraged, accusing me of being dramatic and seeking to spoil Emma's graduation party. My mother went so far as to add, "We raised you, clothed you, and covered your head with a roof. The least you could do is assist your sister in having a lifetime of travel." I inhaled deeply and answered, "You decided to have children. Your obligation as parents was to support us. It does not mean you are free to use credit cards under my identity." Emma, who had been calm up until now, started crying. She wailed, "I can't believe you're trying to ruin my graduation gift. You have always harbors envy of me. Why can't you simply be glad for me once?" Her comments stung, but they also sharpened my will. I knew this pattern of entitlement and favoritism ran deep, and it was time to create some clear limits. "Emma," I continued, trying to keep my voice soft but strong, "I'm glad for you and I'm proud of your graduation. But this vacation was booked illegally with money taken without permission. It's not okay and it's not a gift from me." At last, my normally quiet dad spoke up. "Son, we didn't think it was such a big deal. For crises, we have always had access to your card. As a family, we simply reasoned that this one occasion would be acceptable." What I was hearing defied belief. "Dad, this was not an emergency and $155,000 is not a small sum. You cannot only choose to spend my money without consulting me." Emma was crying, my parents were furious, and I felt exhausted but determined when the call finished. Insisting that I was overreacting and that they would reimburse me shortly, they refused to call off the trip. Following the conference, I moved forward. I told a buddy of mine, a lawyer, the circumstances. He cautioned me that, should I decide to take legal action, what my parents did was in fact illegal and grounds for legal action exist. I also reported the illegal credit card use by going to the police station. The officer I spoke with took down all the specifics and was sympathetic. He advised me that although following charges would probably cause a significant divide in my family, I was quite within my rights to do so. About what to do going forward, I'm still divided. I adore my family, on one hand, yet I get nauseous thinking about suing them. Conversely, their behavior is inappropriate. Hence, if I do not act strongly right now, this kind of behavior may resurface in the future. I have chosen to wait and see for now what results from the credit card company's inquiry. To stop any more illegal usage of my information, I also froze my credit. This whole scenario has let me know I had to set more rigid rules for my family. Though I've always attempted to be the peacekeeper, that is, to straighten things out and maintain everyone's happiness, I have let myself be repeatedly exploited in doing so. Though I'm hurt and outraged, I also feel an odd sort of empowerment. I'm standing up for myself and saying no, this is unacceptable, for the first time. Though unpleasant and frightening, it also seems vital. Again, thanks all for your support and guidance. Once I have more updates on the credit card inquiry or if anything else comes of course with my family, I will update once more. Update 2. My previous update was several weeks ago and a lot has transpired. I wish to thank them once more for their help and guidance. Your remarks have been a lighthouse through this trying period. First, the good news, my credit card company's inquiry came back positive. They reversed the charges since they agreed they were illegal. Having that $115,000 weight off of my shoulders relieves a great deal. Now let's consider familial fallout. All hell exploded when my parents and Emma discovered the credit card dispute had caused the trip to be canceled. Furious calls and texts swamped my phone. Saying I had destroyed Emma's life, my mother left an especially angry message labeling me a selfish, unappreciative son. Emma went to social media and shared a moving video about how her spiteful brother had ruined her dream graduation trip. A few of our shared friends and relatives began contacting me to find out why I was treating my younger sister so badly. The matter was spiraling out of control, and I knew I had to straighten the record. I posted a calm, objective piece outlining what had actually happened. How my card had been used without my consent and how I had tried to mend things with my family prior to acting with the credit card company. The reaction to my post was uneven. Some were encouraging, expressing dismay at the behavior of my parents. Others felt I ought to have just taken one for the team and let Emma travel. Finding out how many others felt it acceptable to conduct fraud as long as it was for the family opened eyes. A few days following my post, my mother's sister called me unexpectedly. She offered some family history I hadn't learned before and showed understanding of my circumstances. My mother apparently had a history of financial irresponsibility and has past taken advantage of family members. My aunt gave me her support and urged me to be firm. Talking with my aunt helped me to see that the problem went beyond one occurrence. Years of enabled and excused behavior have set a habit of behavior. I understood then that I had to keep strict limits not only for my own benefit but also to stop the cycle of financial mistreatment. I made the decision to go really big. For the foreseeable future, I informed my parents I would be not interacting with them at all. I said I couldn't trust them right now and I needed time to sort through what had happened. Emma also heard me say that although I loved her and felt good about her accomplishments, I wanted some distance from her too. Their responses were almost always unfavorable. My parents charged me with severing the family. Emma sobbed and stated I was punishing her for something outside her control. Though difficult, I stayed to be sure of my choice. Amid all this family turmoil, I have been especially focused on shielding myself against potential financial mistreatment. I replaced all of my passwords, closed the credit card my parents had access to, and opened a fresh one at another bank. To work through my emotions about the circumstances and create better limits, I have also begun visiting a therapist. One unanticipated benefit of this whole process is that it has brought me closer to a few relatives and my aunt, who contacted me to provide encouragement. Knowing that not every member of my family finds what my parents did acceptable is good. Regarding Emma's graduation vacation, I learned via the family grapevine that her parents are still considering sending her someplace. Though I keep reminding myself that it wasn't my obligation to offer that for her, part of me feels bad about her missing the Europe vacation. I still find myself battling doubt and remorse. Sometimes I worry whether I did the right thing or too hard, but then I remember the violation I felt when I found out what they had done and I know I made the correct decision in speaking out for myself. Though it's a painful wake-up call, this event has also been a valuable lesson in self-respect and establishing limitations. I'm finding that love shouldn't have a price tag and that saying no, even to family, is okay. Again, I appreciate your support. For now, I'm concentrating on mending and moving forward. I will post should there be any noteworthy changes. Update 3. My last update was almost 2 months ago, hence I wanted to let you all know some advancements. Over this trying period, your ongoing support and guidance has been priceless. Let us start with the most urgent matter, the legal one. Following much thought and legal advice, I opted against charging my parents. This wasn't a simple choice, and I know many of you suggested I file a lawsuit. My attorney noted though, that since the credit card company had reversed the charges, going for a criminal prosecution would be difficult and maybe expensive without any assurance of victory. Rather, we have formally written my parents a cease and desist letter telling them that any future use of my financial data will cause instant legal action. Now, on the family matter. The no-contact period with Emma and my parents has been instructive and difficult at once. It allows me time to consider our family dynamics and concentrate on myself. Having regularly attended therapy, which has been quite beneficial in helping me to process my emotions and create better limits, about 1 month into the no-contact period, Emma sent me an uninvited email. Unlike her earlier crying claims, this email was refreshingly adult. She said she had given it much thought and came to see how mistaken our parents' behavior was. She felt bad about her first response and about not defending me. Emma said she had always known about the favoritism but had been too comfortable and afraid to question it. Though I was cautiously hopeful by Emma's email, I decided to go gently. Since then, we have had a few phone calls. From what I can see, she is actually attempting to grasp my viewpoint. She had earlier kept to herself some of her own experiences with our parents' financial carelessness. The aborted Europe trip seemed to be a wake-up call for her as well. Regarding my parents, they have been less ready to take accountability. From guilt-tripping emails to enraged voicemails, they have tried multiple times to reach me. One day, my mother even showed up at my apartment without warning, creating quite a disturbance in the corridor. Though it was tough, I stayed my ground and avoided interacting. The extended family dynamics have been conflicted. Some families have been encouraging, especially my aunt who first got in touch. She is now a great friend and ally. Others, using the "but their family" justification, nevertheless encourage me to reconcile with my parents. For my own mental peace, I have had to cut ties to some of these cousins. Positively, nonetheless, this circumstances has resulted in some unanticipated personal development. Spending the time and effort I used to manage the drama in my family has helped me to concentrate more on my own life and aspirations. I have started a new pastime, photography, and have been spending more time with pals that honor my limits. I have also made some really important financial choices. I started establishing a stronger emergency fund and have been more generous to my retirement funds. The value of financial freedom and stability has been really emphasized by this whole experience. Last week brought one especially fulfilling event. At work, I got a promotion accompanied by a significant wage raise. I might have felt obliged in the past to tell my family this news and the money gained. This time I celebrated privately with a small group of close friends, glad of my achievements free from guilt or obligation to share. Regarding Emma's graduation vacation, my aunt told me our parents ultimately sent her on a 2-week California tour. Emma apparently had fun with it. Looking ahead, I'm somewhat hopeful but yet wary. I have chosen to keep my parents under no contact for at least 3 more months. I need more time to recover and evaluate whether they can honor my limits. Emma allows me to gently restore our friendship, but I'm moving carefully and keeping clear limits. This encounter has really helped me to learn about the real meaning of family, standing up for myself, and establishing limits. Family, I've come to see, is about love, respect, and support as much as blood ties. The friends and relatives who have supported me during this struggle have shown me what actual family entails. About financial freedom, I have also gained a useful insight. Although I have always been frugal with money, this scenario has made me especially more alert. On all of my accounts, I have added extra security measures. I have also become more aggressive in safeguarding my financial data, even from relatives. Particularly during family gatherings I missed because of the no-contact policy, there have been times of uncertainty and grief. Mother's Day proved especially challenging, but I remind myself that my mental health and personal development depend on this distance. One unanticipated result of this is that I have started to be really helpful to friends handling personal family financial problems. Many people have come to me seeking guidance on establishing limits and handling financially reckless family members. Being able to guide others through the same circumstances makes one feel wonderful. Regarding my parents' financial circumstances, my aunt has told me they are having trouble. Apparently, they had been depending on my credit for purposes beyond Emma's vacation. This has caused some conflict between them since my dad holds my mom responsible for pushing too far with the credit card theft. Though part of me feels bad knowing they are facing money problems, I tell myself that their bad financial choices are not my duty to correct. Emma has offered some observations on how our parents responded to all of this. She adds they still don't really know why I responded so passionately. They can't understand why I'm making such a big deal out of it. They view their activities as natural family behavior. This ignorance irritates me, but it also helps me to realize that I made the correct choice in separating myself. After much thought on my early years and early adulthood, I came to see trends of financial and emotional control I had accepted. Though it's been a difficult journey, it also releases something. I'm learning to validate my own emotions and experiences apart from parental approval. Regarding my personal life, I have lately started dating once more. Dealing with all this familial drama, I had been reluctant to interact with anyone. But lately I came across someone who has been rather sympathetic about my circumstances. Though early days, it feels fantastic to be developing a relationship with someone who upholds my values and limits. I'm also thinking about drastically altering my life. Though I have always wanted a master's degree, I put it off somewhat because of worries about how it would affect my capacity to support my family financially. I'm now really researching programs and thinking about diving in. Making decisions grounded just on what's best for my future and me feels empowering. I find as I draft this update how much has changed in a few months. The first shock and resentment had subsided to be replaced by a cool determination. I'm actively building the life I want for myself, not only responding to the behavior of my family. To those of you perhaps handling such familial problems, I want to say it gets better. Although setting limits is difficult and there can be reactions, keep firm. Your rights include those to guard your mental health, money, and personal belongings. Again, I appreciate all of your support on this trip. Your guidance and support have been a lifesaver. Though I'm not sure what the future holds for my connection with my sister and parents, I know I will be fine whatever comes of it. Right now I'm stronger, more certain of myself, and ready to meet whatever lies ahead. If there are any major changes, I will notify once more. For now, I am focused on forward-looking and creating the life I want surrounded by supportive people. Here's wisdom earned and fresh starts. Update 4. My last update was 6 months ago, and I felt it was time to let all of you, who have been so encouraging over this path, know the most recent developments. First, the most news. I have been accepted into a master's program in a city 3 hours from where I presently live. This 2-year financial technology program fits very nicely with my professional objectives. Starting this fall, I am equal in excitement and anxiety about this new phase of my life. Choosing to work for this degree was not simple. It involves quitting my career, relocating to a new place and starting some student debt, but it also means making investments in my future, in the manner I have always wanted. I came to see that I had been holding back, constantly weighing how my choices might affect my family. It seems quite freeing to now be choosing based on what would be best for me. Regarding my family, things have changed in ways I never would have predicted. 2 months ago, the no-contact period with my parents formally came to an end. I agreed to a family therapy session run under the direction of a professional therapist. It was quite strong. Defensively still believing they had done nothing wrong, my parents arrived, but as the session went on, some shockingly real facts emerged. My dad had hidden from everyone, including my mom, a large loss of money from a poor investment. For months they had been covertly struggling financially, and they looked to my credit card to keep appearances. Many tears and accusations followed from this insight. My dad felt guilty of his bad financial choices, my mom felt deceived by his silence, and both of them at once seemed to realize the weight of what they had done to me. Although this justification does not absolve their behavior, it did enable me to see the desperation driving their bad decisions. The therapist guided us through some of these problems, and for the first time both of my parents sincerely apologized. Monthly family therapy sessions are going to continue under our agreement. Though I'm still keeping strict limits and it's a gradual process, I feel cautiously hopeful about reconstructing our connection on better terms. Emma has kept developing and maturing. She moved into her own apartment and started working full-time in order to reach financial independence. Our conversations have become more frequent, and I feel as though I am first starting to know my sister as an adult. She has even sought guidance on saving and budgeting, which is a major advancement in our relationship. Personal-wise, the relationship I highlighted in my last update has evolved into something unique. Though it means we will be doing long distance for a period, Sarah has been quite encouraging of my choice to return to school. Her own experiences with establishing limits with family have made her a great source of insight and encouragement. Financially, I am in good shape. Thanks to the encouragement I got, I was able to somewhat offset the expenses of graduate school and save a sizable sum for my move. I have also started to defend my financial data far more aggressively. I recently had to turn down an attempt by a distant relative to guilt me into co-signing a loan. Though it wasn't easy, I stood my ground and felt good about imposing limits. I've been thinking about how much has changed since that first startling phone call from my mother concerning the credit card charges as I get ready for this next phase of my life. The hurt and resentment I had then have mostly disappeared. Instead, I now feel empowerment and self-assurance I never realized I had. This process has taught me so much. Even, and especially, with family, I now see the value of establishing and upholding limits. True family, whether related by blood or by choice, promotes your development and respects your boundaries. I have come to see that it is okay to give my own well-being and future top priority. Thank you to everyone who has tracked my narrative and provided encouragement and guidance along the road. During some quite trying circumstances, your words have been a lighthouse of strength and clarity. To anyone who might be experiencing similar family conflicts, know that it is possible to emerge on the other side wiser and stronger. I am excited and full of possibilities as I pack my flat and get ready for this new journey, not something I have felt in years. I'm glad of how far I have gone, and I am excited about what the future presents. I'll be busy with my move and starting school, hence I might not update again for some time. Nonetheless, I will always be appreciative of the help I have gotten here. Here are fresh starts, acquired knowledge, and the bravery to design the life we wish for personally.